The legacy of the twin-bound. Lyana woke to the hush that comes just before sunrise, when the world seems to breathe in and hold everything still. Her cheek pressed against Lucian's shoulder. Their blankets were damp with dew and scattered petals. The chill should have made her shiver, but his warmth and steady heartbeat held the cold away. Close by, her wolf lay curled like a silver shadow, ears pricked toward the fading grove behind them. A softness lingered in her chest, the lingering glow of vows spoken under drifting blossoms. Yet a new weight pressed beneath that glow, a quiet sense that the earth itself waited. Lucian blinked awake as her breath shifted. He smiled, brushing a petal from her hair, fingertips pausing to trace the rune at the hollow of her throat. "Dawn found us," he whispered. She kissed his knuckles. "Let it watch," she answered, voice low. Their wolves lifted heads, tails thumping once in easy agreement. Around them, camp stirred. Liora laughed softly when Lyrian tried to catch a squirrel thieving crumbs. His playful lunge sent him tumbling into grass, and she offered an outstretched hand that pulled him up and directly into her arms. Their embrace was quick but genuine, wolves circling their ankles like guardians eager for the day. Kalen paced the edge of camp, spear in hand, eyes scanning the path east. Even at a distance, tension gathered in the line of his shoulders. Aiden followed at his heels, mimicking the warrior's long strides until Kalen's grim face softened into a grin. He handed the boy a smaller walking stick fashioned from straight birch, a practice spear of sorts. Aiden puffed out his chest, proud. Breakfast was humble. Ella stirred flax porridge in a narrow pot while Isara sprinkled in dried berries. Kieran passed wooden bowls, humming a gentle tune that floated beneath birdsong. Raven and Lucian, the Lycan king, spoke in quiet tones with Thalos and the shaman, the elders' expressions a weave of concern and something like reverence. When everyone had eaten, Thalos rose, staff shining subtly, where morning light kissed its crystal tip. "The forest will notice our leaving," he said, voice carrying. "Give it thanks, and it may lend silence to our steps." One by one, the company knelt, pressing palms to earth. Lyana whispered gratitude for the courage petals had taught her. Lucian thanked the grove for teaching fear to bend before love. Liora breathed a promise to carry peace forward, and Lyrian vowed to uphold joy. At the final bow, a hush swept the clearing. Petals lifted in a soft spiral, then settled like approval. The wolves flicked ears, noses pointed east. The path awaited. They stepped out together, 2 by 2, wolves trotting ahead. The air cooled quickly away from the grove. Leaves overhead dimmed from lush emerald to a deeper, almost blue-green, and the forest floor traded warm loam for damp earth. Wind tugged at cloaks, carrying scents of wet stone and something older, the musk of forgotten corridors, the sigh of ruined arches. Lucian noticed first how the birds grew scarce. He squeezed Lyana's fingers. "Hear that?" She tilted her head. What should have been a chorus at morning's peak had become a lone thrush trill that died quickly into hush. Her wolf's voice murmured inside. "The forest listens harder when songs fade." Lyana relayed the thought aloud. Lucian nodded, jaw setting. Ahead, mist threaded between trunks, thin at first, then thick enough to blur edges. Every so often the mist parted and seemed to swirl into shapes. Half a child running, half a wolf leaping, then nothing but smoke. Aiden gasped, pointing, but Kalen hushed him gently. "Mist tricks," he said. Yet his spear tip lowered, ready. They walked for hours, stopping only to sip water and adjust packs. Whispered voices began drifting through the mist, sometimes calling names that belonged to no one present, other times murmuring words just out of hearing. Lucian caught something like lyre on the wind. Lyana heard a faint mother sobbing. Each time, their wolves responded, pressing flanks against legs, pulling attention back to steady ground. Liora halted once, eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" she asked Lyrian. "Someone calling Little Flame?" Lyrian shook his head, brows knit. He placed a hand on her cheek. "Only your heartbeat," he said. And though his answer soothed her, the tension around his eyes admitted he heard something too. When the sky reached its highest pale silver, they came upon a clearing where the mist thinned. Here the trees leaned inward unnaturally, branches twisting into near arches, as though guiding them forward. At the center, an ancient stone marker jutted half-buried, its surface carved with fading twin spirals. Lucian paused, tracing the groove of one spiral with a thumb. The stone felt warm despite the damp air. His wolf murmured, "Old warding stone, cracked, but still singing." Liora's wolf added, "Song changes because hearts changed it." The shaman approached, passing palm above the marker. A hiss of static lifted her hair. "Varric's hand moved here," she warned. The stone thrums with pulled grief. Raven laid her palm on Lyana's shoulder. "Fear what this path could show you," she cautioned. "But remember, what is real?" Lyana nodded, meeting Lucian's gaze. Beneath dread, determination glimmered. They pressed onward, crossing into a valley where trees thinned to scattered columns of stone. The ground sloped downward, and beyond a final ridge, the ruins of Serathil revealed themselves, broken arches reaching skyward like ribs of a colossal beast, their surfaces carved with intertwined wolves worn by wind, ivy-cloaked pillars in dark green, dotted with purple blooms that bled color into cracks. 4 statues, twice human height but missing limbs, stood at cardinal points, each once a twin warrior, now fractured and pitted. At the center spread a reflective pool, still as glass despite no shelter from wind. Its mirror surface shone silver, reflecting ruins and sky with unsettling clarity. Even the mist skirted its edge, leaving a ring of clear air around the water. The company halted, and wordless awe mingled with unease. Wolves whined low. Lyana felt a tug deep inside, not physical, but emotional, pulling her toward the pool. She saw Lucian's gaze follow the same invisible line. Without speaking, they moved, footsteps echoing soft, on cracked flagstones. Liora and Lyrian followed different pulls. She toward an arched doorway half-collapsed, he toward a vine-laden corridor. But their hands never fully parted. Kalen called quiet orders to companions to hold perimeter positions. Darius stationed himself near the Western warrior statue, arrow knocked loosely. Isara offered silent chants for protection. Kieran strummed one hush chord on his lute, then held the instrument close as if afraid music might ring untrue here. Lyana reached the pool first. She knelt, staring into the mirrored surface. At first she saw only herself, eyes wide, hair dark against pale stones. Then the reflection shifted. Lucian's body appeared behind her, lying motionless on scorched ground. Flames licked edges, sky blackened. A breath caught in her chest. Her wolf's voice slid through the panic. "Fear does not make it true." She squeezed her eyes shut, pressed fingers to the rune at her throat, and whispered, "You're alive." When she opened her eyes, only her own steady reflection stared back. Lucian approaching, concern etched. He reached her side. "What did you see?" "You gone," she admitted, voice small. His wolf spoke inside him. "Hold her fear the way you hold her joy." He cupped her cheeks, bending to kiss her forehead. "I'm here." The reflection rippled, clearing. The world burned no more. Across the courtyard, Lucian's ears filled with a sneering whisper calling him fraud. Unworthy. Voices coiled like smoke around his thoughts. He fumbled for Lyana's moon pendant at his neck, closing fist around it. He pictured her laughter, her calm. The whisper retreated, leaving silence in its wake. He exhaled, steady again. Inside the vine corridor, Liora tripped on rubble. Vines curled overhead, blocking light, making a tunnel of green. Shadows pooled at the end, forming a doorway. She swore she heard her own voice echo, pleading, "Don't leave me." The corridor answered with emptiness. Lyrian's pulse hammered when he sensed her fear. He abandoned his path and reached the corridor entrance in quick strides. "Liora," he called, tone firm, but gentle. She turned, tears bright. Seeing him broke the illusion. The doorway filled with ordinary light and dust motes. He gathered her trembling form. "Even ruins can't separate us," he murmured. Her wolf sighed relief. His wolf added, "Love heals echoes into silence." They returned to the courtyard together. Wolves pressed close, tongues lolling, bodies warm grounding rods against creeping chill. Kalen's shout broke the fragile calm. "Movement!" he called, pointing to tree line. Shadows shifted between ancient trunks, shapes half-formed. Darius drew arrow to cheek. Kieran set fingers to lute strings, ready to echo commands. Ella shielded Aiden behind her, though the boy's wide eyes shone more curious than afraid. A form emerged, a cluster of mist shaped vaguely like a person, tall and cloaked. It hovered at Ruin's edge, no face, only suggestion of hollow eyes. Wolves growled in unison. Lucian stepped forward, sword still sheathed but hand ready. Lyana moved with him, shoulder brushing his. The shape wavered. From nowhere a feather drifted down, larger than any crow's. It landed on cracked flagstone and dissolved into black dust that seeped into seams. The form whispered, words like brittle leaves. "Unworthy." Before fear could root, Lyana clasped Lucian's hand, lifted their joined fingers. "Fear lies," she declared. Light sparked from their rune marks, faint but real. Liora and Lyrian joined, linking hands. The wolves lifted heads, letting low harmonized howl rise and curl around the courtyard like a warm wind. The shadow shrank, edges fraying. It fled into mist as though swept by unseen tide. Silence returned, heavier but less threatening. Raven exhaled. The Lycan King's grip on sword pommel eased. Thalos leaned on staff, voice steady. Illusion cannot hold in presence of truth. Night began its descent early beneath thick clouds. Kalen guided all to set camp in shadow of Eastern Arch, where broken stones created a natural barrier. Fires were forbidden. Instead, they lit small lanterns, with hooded tops, blue flame, that gave little smoke. The wolves settled at perimeter points, eyes glowing and dim. As dusk swallowed color, Lyana and Lucian sat at pool's edge, its surface now reflecting a sky peppered with first stars. He brushed stray hair from her eyes. "Does fear still whisper?" She shook head. "Fear always whispers, but love answers louder." He kissed her softly. The pool rippled, then calmed. Under a crumbling arch, Liora rested in Lyrian's lap. Her gaze traced cracks overhead. "If this place tests us," she whispered, "will we pass?" He rested his chin on her hair. "Even if we stumble, we walk on together." "That is passing." She smiled against his tunic. Wolves laid down near them, breaths steady. Later, Kalen and Darius kept watch at the twin warrior statues. Moonlight slid through broken arches, casting patterns on stone. Aiden dozed, wrapped in Ella's cloak, Kieran playing soft lullaby. Isara sat cross-legged, murmuring protective verses. Within tents, elders spoke. Raven shared her worry. "Their hearts stand firm, but Varric twists ley lines. How long until shadow gains weight?" The shaman replied, "Shadow feeds on what is hidden. They shared fears openly today. That starves him." Lucian, the Lycan King, nodded, though worry pinched his brow. Thalos ended counsel with a whisper to Earth, asking it to remember love's sound. Midnight brought stillness so complete each breath sounded loud. Wolves pricked ears as tremor whispered through ground. One soft pulse. In the pool, reflections flickered. For heartbeat, 4 cloaked figures stood where the twins had been. Their faces hidden but posture unmistakable, predatory tilt of shoulders. Liana's wolf growled first, deep and warning. Lucian's wolf joined, sound resonant through courtyard. Light bloomed faint around twin pairs' tents, soft as dawn. The figures dissolved like smoke on wind. Tremor ceased. Wolves settled, satisfied. Morning would bring more miles, more tests, but tonight illusions learned love did not fracture under quiet pressure. In stillness, Lyana's dream carried her to a field bright with sunflowers, Lucian at her side laughing. Liora dreamed of a small stone cottage by a river, Lyrian carving runes into doorframe, promising home. Mist curled along ruined walls, but where wolves lay, petals from blooming grounds drifted unseen to rest beside paws, delicate reminders that even in broken places, blossoms followed hearts brave enough to bloom. The first pale gray light of dawn slipped across broken stone like cautious fingers, revealing faint dew on every vine and the glimmer of quartz dust where the shaman had cast silent wards. Lyana emerged from her tent to find a hush even deeper than night's. The ruins of Serathil felt suspended. No wind, no bird call, as if the world had paused between heartbeats. She pulled her cloak tighter, inhaling damp air scented with ivy and distant rain. Her wolf rose from a crouch by the entrance, stretching lean muscles, then pressed its shoulder to her thigh. Ground's pulse steadier, it noted. She listened. Yes, the odd heartbeat under earth had calmed, but it still throbbed faint and cold. Lucian strode from between tumbled columns, rolling his shoulders as if working out a stubborn knot. He reached her in 2 quick steps and brushed dew from her cheek. You feel the hush, too. It's like the ruins are holding breath, she whispered. Their wolves exchanged a quiet rumble of agreement. Behind them, camp began to stir. Lanterns winked out, packs tightened. Kalen approached, spear butt tapping moss. Perimeter clear, he reported, voice low. No shadows during watch. Yet his eyes flicked to the pool where a faint ripple still spread outward in perfect circles, though no stone had been tossed. He frowned but kept thoughts to himself. By the time the sun bled pale gold over shattered spires, the company had eaten a short meal of oatcakes and tart apple slices. A plan formed around the council fire pit's ashes. Today, they would explore the inner sanctum. The central hall rumored to house the first written iteration of the twin bond, carved upon an altar stone. Thalos believed Varric aimed to corrupt that inscription, twisting prophecy at the root. If the mates could reach it first, they might reinforce the bond's truth with living proof of love. Raven stood before the ruined arch, voice gentle but steady. Not all will enter, she said. The sanctum demands as little fear inside its walls as possible. Twins and wolves, Thalos and the shaman only. Others guard each point of entry. Darius accepted assignment to Northern Arch. Kalen took south. Kieran, Ella, Isara, and Aiden held camp's heart, lanterns ready. Lyana and Liora exchanged a nod. Wolves padded close, tails lifted. Lucian brushed his thumb across Lyana's knuckles. Lyrian squeezed Liora's hand in silent promise. They crossed the courtyard. Mist rose from cracks curling around ankles like friendly cats. The central hall loomed ahead, 2 jagged pillars supporting a vaulted arch, its keystone cracked, yet holding. Ivy crept through every seam, dotted by lavender flowers that drooped in perpetual dusk. Beneath the arch, broad steps descended into murky twilight. At the threshold, Thalos paused, planting staff. He murmured a short chant. The crystal tip pulsed dim amber. Illusion thickens beyond this point, he warned. Speak truth often. The shaman handed each twin a smooth riverstone no larger than a thumbprint. Hold it when doubt rises, she said. Stone remembers water's patience. Lyana pocketed hers, feeling its cool weight as reassurance. They stepped inside. Light dwindled. The hall ceiling had collapsed in places, letting thin shafts of sun spear down, illuminating dust motes. Carved reliefs lined walls. Wolves running beneath moons, 2 figures hand in hand facing storm clouds. Many carvings bore gouges as if someone had clawed at them in rage. Every footfall stirred echoes. Lucian felt hairs rise on his arms. His wolf's voice whispered, "Shadows taste memory but choke on hope." He tightened grip on Lyana's hand. Ahead, Liora's wolf warned softly. "Air, here, listens to sadness." A wide set of doors once sealed the inner chamber, but only iron hinges remained, twisted outward as if burst by force from within. Beyond lay a circular hall, floor of cracked white marble veined with black. At its center rose a rectangular altar stone, waist-high, surface engraved with runes dulled by age. As the twins and their mates entered, splotches of dark flickered at periphery of vision, illusory shapes that vanished when faced. Wolves bristled, but walked on. They reached the altar. Lyana traced its top, two intertwining spirals framing a line of runic text she could not read. In its grooves lingered flakes of black residue, feather ash. Lucian wiped a thumb across. Ash smeared like ink, staining skin. He exhaled through teeth. Thalos approached, reading faint symbols. "Original vow," he murmured. "Love chosen is love ordained." The shaman ran fingers a hair's breadth above inscription. "Corrupted at edge," she noted, voice trembling. "We must renew words." She stepped back, gesturing for couples to circle opposite ends of altar. Wolves formed an outer ring, tails stiff. Dust swirled upward, though no wind stirred. Thalos spoke. "Lay both palms on stone. Speak a truth of love no fear can undo." Lyana met Lucian's gaze. They placed palms flat upon cool surface. A jolt like river water raced up their arms, icy, clarifying. The hall around them darkened, narrowing focus to each other's eyes. "I once feared my strength would make me unlovable," Lyana said, voice steady though eyes glistened. "But you stand beside me, not behind or before. You make strength a place to rest." Lucian's voice barely above breath. "I once believed love meant guarding someone from darkness. Now I know love is meeting darkness together. With you, I'm braver than alone." Light seeped from runes beneath their hands, first faint, then brightening. Ash burned away like fog under sun. The stone warmed. On the other side, Liora and Lyrian pressed palms down. She swallowed hard. "I fear being forgotten," she whispered. "I fear silence." Lyrian's thumb stroked along her wrist. "Then I promise to remember you louder than silence can ever whisper," he answered. Her laugh cracked into tears. The stone's glow brightened, veins of gold chasing cracks. Dust clouds thickened near walls, coalescing into hazy figures, hooded silhouettes circling just outside wolf-line. Wolves growled in unison, but held formation. Thalos lifted staff. The crystal flared white, freezing illusions mid-step. Lyana sensed the silhouette's intent, to break concentration. She closed her eyes, and in thought, called her wolf's wisdom. "We face them?" her wolf asked. She answered, "Love answers. Fear fades." Her wolf barked once in agreement, sound echoing inside mind. She opened eyes. The silhouettes advanced, but their forms flickered like candle flames. Lucian removed his secondary palm from altar, extended it sideways to Lyana's cheek. Their eyes locked. He kissed her softly, deliberately. The kiss felt like dawn cresting horizon. Warm, unstoppable. Shadows faltered, edges dissolving. Across altar, Lyrian bent to kiss Liora's brow. He whispered, "I see you." She whispered back, "Then I exist." Shadows cracked, splitting into wisps. Runes blazed gold, throwing lattice of light across chamber. Shadows evaporated, leaving only dust motes sparkling in beams. Wolves relaxed tails, letting out soft chuffs of victory. The stone's glow subsided to steady pulse. Runes looked fresh-carved, filled with molten light that pulsed to heartbeats. The shaman's eyes brimmed with relief. "Bond renewed," she declared. Thalos bowed head. Yet as calm settled, a faint scraping echoed overhead. Everyone looked up. High in darkness, a thin fissure spiderwebbed across ceiling slab. Dust rained in slow trickle. Kaelin's distant shout resonated down corridor. Movement outside. His voice tensed with urgency. Darius echoed from opposite arch. Wolves snapped alert, circling their humans. The shaman waved staff. Illusions may breed real tremor now. Finish quickly. Thalos hurried each pair to inscribe names with fingertip on glowing rune line. Letters burned softly, then absorbed into stone. When final strokes sunk in, the pulse moved outward like ripple on lake, washing walls with warm dusk hue. The fissure above sealed as if time reversed, dust halting midair before dropping harmlessly. Lucian exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he held. Lyana leaned into him, adrenaline draining. Liora squeezed Lyrian's hand, gratitude shining. Wolves shook fur, content growls vibrating chests. They exited inner hall to courtyard bathed in odd twilight despite sun high outside. Kaelin met them halfway, spear still raised. Shadows formed but fled at light wave, he reported. Aiden peeked behind him, eyes wide but smiling. They looked scared, he told Lyana proudly. Raven hurried up, relief flooding features when she saw twins unharmed. Lucian, the Lichen King, clasped his son's shoulders, pride and caution flickering together. Thalos explained swift. We reinforced original vow. Prophecy stands stronger. The shaman added, but Varric felt resistance. He will press harder. Kieran strummed tentative chord, the note rang pure, unwarped by ruins. Ella sighed, tension loosening. Afternoon wore on. They broke for rest under safer arch. Lyana sat with Lucian on a fallen column warmed by sunlight, now pushing mist back. He produced her river stone, placing it in her palm. Doubt tried, but this remained just stone. She smiled, kissing his cheek. And you remained just you, which is enough. Liora and Lyrian perched on mossy ledge overlooking courtyard. He traced pattern of vines up her sleeve, marveling they met no illusions once vow completed. Love is shield, she said. And sword, he added. Their wolves napped, bellies to sun. Kaelin reported no more feathers found. Thalos still sensed undercurrents of twisted grief, but weaker. Varric recoils, he said. He may leap farther next. Evening flame flickered in sheltered nook shielded by risen stones. Supper was dried fish flaked into herb broth, eaten from hollowed gourds. Conversation lighter. Aiden asked the shaman if runes can sing. She said yes, when hearts do. Kieran shared tale of courting Ella with clumsy verses. Ella hid face laughing, cheeks scarlet. When last glow of day bled purple, Lucian guided Lyana to reflective pool once more. Its surface mirrored stars just blooming overhead. He dropped a pebble. Ripples spread, but no visions rose. Still, he said. She took his hand. Because we are. He removed a silver loop from pouch, braided of his hair and thin copper wire. A circle so memories know where to sit, he said, sliding it onto her finger. She caught breath, kissed ring, then his lips. Beneath them, pool rippled as if smiling. Nearby, under twin warrior statues, Liora pulled a thin chain of twisted grass and flower stem from pocket, a ring she'd braided during afternoon watch. She slipped it onto Lyrian's finger. Temporary until peace gives us time to craft silver, she said. He lifted her hand, kissing each knuckle. Silver waits, my heart does not, he replied. Wolves brushed noses, approving. Night settled deep. Stars wheeled slow. Campfires banked to embers. Wolves paced perimeter once, then curled around sleepers. Lyana and Lucian lay within one blanket, ring warm between them. Liora dozed on Lyrian's chest, his fingers stroking her braid. Halfway to midnight, a distant boom rolled through hills, faint but hard. Wolves lifted heads, ears forward. Lucian woke, meeting Lyana's eyes. Thunder, he whispered. She listened. No storm scent, no wind. Another boom, this time more a groan, stone against stone. Ruins beneath them vibrated. Pools rippled. Lyrian rose, scanning dark. Liora's wolf stood, growling low. Across camp, Kaelin grabbed spear, Darius readied arrow. Elders emerged from tents, Thalos planted staff. Crystal glowed urgent orange. He faced southeast where hills sloped into valley veiled by mist. Ley lines shifting, he said. Varric tears ground elsewhere. Silence fell save wolves' low rumbles. Eventually tremor subsided. Thalos lowered staff. Not near, for now. Lucian pulled Lyana back to blanket, though eyes stayed alert. Love holds, he whispered. She repeated words, letting them root. Dawn would demand plans whether to pursue Varric's trail or shore up allies first. But in the breathing stillness between echoes, two rings gleamed, copper and grass, symbols that fear had not triumphed. Wolves finally settled, sighing as though satisfied. Overhead stars burned steady. In their reflection on the pool, 4 points of light appeared brighter than all others, arranged like bonding runes across sky's mirror, reminding whoever might watch, shadow or star, that love chosen was love ordained, no matter how winds bent the roads ahead. The sky wore a fragile blush when Lyana opened her eyes the next morning. She lay in the crook of Lucian's arm, listening to the soft hush of his breathing and the rhythmic thud of his heart. Nearby, their wolves stretched, paws scraping stone in quiet greeting. A faint chill still hung over the ruins, but pale sunlight already gathered between broken arches, turning shards of quartz dust into tiny sparks. Lyana ran her thumb over the simple copper and hair ring Lucian had slipped on her finger last night. It was warm, pulsing gently with every heartbeat. She smiled, pressing her lips to the back of Lucian's hand. He stirred, catching her eyes, with a drowsy grin. "You always wake first," he murmured. "Only because I can't stop watching you breathe," she said, cheeks warming. His wolf huffed an approving sound. Lucian drew her closer until their foreheads touched. Silence wrapped them for a sweet moment, both knowing it might be the last quiet breath before the day unfurled. Across the camp, Liora knelt beside the extinguished embers of last night's small fire, coaxing warmth into her hands. Lyrian sat behind her, legs stretched out, brushing leaves from her cloak. She wore the grass and flower ring he'd accepted the night before, its woven green and gold still fresh despite the night's damp. Her smile flickered shy when she found Lyrian watching. "I thought it might fall apart overnight," she admitted. "It will last as long as we choose to keep it," he said, tugging a loose stem into place. His wolf gave a low, dog-like whine, pleased. She touched Lyrian's cheek, then let it last. Kaelin circled the perimeter once more, spear balanced in easy grip. He noted no new feathers on the stones, no shifting shadows in the mist that still clung to the valley floor. Aiden trudged beside him, stick spear in hand, stifling a yawn but determined to match Kaelin's pace. At one turn, Aiden stopped, staring at a spot where ivy clung thick against an arch. "I thought I saw eyes there," he whispered. Kaelin crouched, inspecting vines. Only dew. He offered Aiden a reassuring nod. "Sometimes old stones play tricks. We see what worries us most." Aiden nodded, gripping his stick tighter. Darius and Isara prepared a quick breakfast of cheese, dried apples, and barley bread. Kieran tuned his lute in soft plucks that blended with the hush of morning wind. Raven and Lucian, the Lycan king, walked side by side through the columns, speaking in low voices about supply routes and potential allies. Thalos and the shaman traced the repaired runes on the altar stone one final time, murmuring protective prayers that blended old tongue with present promise. When the twins and their mates gathered at the reflecting pool, the water was perfectly still. In its surface they saw sky, stone, and their own faces. No illusions, no flames, no shadows. Lyana dipped her finger, sending ripples across the image. "Yesterday this showed me loss," she said. "Today it shows only truth." Lucian placed his hand over hers in the water. "Because we spoke our fears aloud," he said. "Fear thrives in silence." Their wolves nodded in tandem, thoughts brushing their humans with calm approval. Liora and Lyrian followed suit, fingertips grazing the surface, watching 4 sets of ripples merge. Thalos approached. "The sanctum's energy feels balanced," he announced. "But we cannot linger. Varric may seek another wound in the ley lines." Raven stepped forward. "We leave at midday." The shaman touched Liana's arm. "Take the stone I gave you. It holds patience you may need." Liana nodded, tucking it into her pouch. Packing went quickly. Tents folded, bedrolls tied, water skins filled at the pool's clear edge. Kaelin insisted on leading the front column again. Darius guarded the rear. Aiden was tasked with carrying a small lantern of sapphire glass, its flame lit with a spark from the shaman's staff. He marched proudly. Before they left, Kieran played a lilting tune that drifted between vines and tumbled pillars. Ella hummed harmony under her breath. Liana felt the music settle her heartbeat. Liora closed her eyes to memorize the sound of the lute strings echoing off stone. They crossed the courtyard and passed beneath a toppled arch. As they did, a soft tremor rippled underfoot. Everyone paused. Wolves dropped into crouches, ears flattening at the familiar offbeat pulse returning. Lucian glanced at Thalos. The elder shook his head. "Not here." "Distant." The shaman whispered. Another ley line strained. Liana felt a tug at her heart, not pain but the memory of fear. She reached for Lucian's hand. He squeezed, then lifted her knuckles to his lips. The pulse faded. The path beyond the arch descended a narrow slope, lined with silver-barked trees. Mist drifted between trunks, swirling in lazy spirals. Halfway down the slope, Kaelin signaled a stop. The forest ahead grew denser, darker. A rill of cold air washed over them. Lyrian's wolf spoke into his mind. "Something stirs beneath roots." Lyrian placed a calming hand on Leora's back. She inhaled, tasting iron on the wind. Then a whisper drifted between the trees, drifting over them like thin smoke. Unworthy. Alone. Liana's heart thumped, recognizing the tone. But instead of tightening, she stepped forward until the whisper was a hiss in her ear. "We answer you with love," she said softly. Lucian's voice joined hers. "We answer you with truth." Liora and Lyrian echoed in unison. "We answer you together." 4 wolves barked as one, a sound that rang like a bell strike chasing mist. The whispers snapped, shattering into silence. In that hush they heard only their breathing, the rustle of leaves. Kaelin let out a breath he had not known he held, spear lowering slightly. Aiden whispered, "They sound scared this time." Darius chuckled, the sound low. Fear fights hardest when it starts losing. Isara lightly punched his shoulder, reminding him to stay wary even in victory. By late morning they reached the edge of Serathil's boundary. Behind them, broken arches receded into shifting fog, yet the stones seemed to stand straighter than they had on arrival, small testimony to repaired runes and renewed bonds. Lucian paused on a fallen slab to cast one final look back. He could swear the twin warrior statues, though still broken, now seemed less grim. Liana joined him. "Part of me wants to stay," she said, "but staying here would freeze us in yesterday." He nodded. "Love moves forward." She smiled, sliding her fingers between his. Their wolves shared a gentle bump of shoulders at their sides. Raven gathered them near a tall pine where the forest opened into a gentle slope of meadow. "Ahead lies 3 days' travel," she announced, unrolling a hand-drawn map. "We track Varric's likely movement east, toward the Broken Moon Pass." Lucian the Lichen King pointed to a cluster of red marks. "Scouts report shifting shadows along this ridge," he said. "We meet our allies at the Stone Hearth outpost by dusk on the 3rd day." Darius volunteered to scout. Kaelin agreed to roam forward flanks. Ella and Kieran would guard Aiden, whose lantern remained a steady blue glow. Isara would monitor emotional resonance with help from the shaman. They resumed travel, stepping out of the valley. Mist thinned until clear blue sky stretched overhead. Sunlight warmed their backs. Liora sighed at the brightness, feeling heavier memories of the ruins melt like frost. Lyrian squeezed her hand. "You glow again," he murmured. She nudged him with shoulder. "Maybe it's the ring." Lucian and Lyana walked near the center of the formation. At intervals, he whispered stories from childhood, how he once climbed orchard trees to steal ripe pears. Lyana laughed, playfully scolding his childhood self. Her laughter rippled through elf-sized leaves on overhanging branches. Wolves wagged tails. Near midday they reached a brook that burbled over smooth pebbles. Thalos called a short rest. They knelt to drink cold water cupped in hands. Liora sat on a mossy rock, letting her fingertips trace the current. Suddenly she stilled. A spark of memory fluttered. Vision of the crying woman she'd seen in misted forest. Lyrian knelt beside her. "Another vision?" She nodded. "Only a moment." She said nothing, only cried. Lyrian's wolf spoke, echo of sorrow older than us. He relayed to Liora. She breathed out, releasing tension. "Then we give her peace with our joy," she said. They leaned to share a kiss gentle as water's song. The vision melted. Kalen returned from short scout, reporting no signs of Varric's forces, but he found a cluster of black feathers snagged in brambles along the ridgeline. He tossed them into the brook, where they dissolved into ink clouds that thinned quickly. "He probes," Kalen said to Thalos, "yet cannot follow through." Thalos tapped staff. "For now." The trek resumed. The path wound between low hills quilted with purple heather. Wolves bounded ahead, chasing scents of rabbit and fox, always returning to heel when Lucian called. In the golden afternoon, Kieran sang a traveling song about long roads and steady hearts. Even Kalen hummed the refrain under his breath. Liora spotted a stand of bluebells and wove one into Lyrian's braid. He blushed, but left it there. Lucian wove a sprig of heather behind Lyana's ear, claiming she needed a crown for her courage. She retorted that he needed a matching color, and tucked twin sprigs into his collar. Their wolves wagged approving tails, pleased by the exchange of adornments. As evening approached, clouds massed in gray swaths, dimming sun to copper. The path entered a gorge where cliff walls pressed close, strangling the wind. Everyone grew quiet. The offbeat pulse returned, faint but insistent. Wolves slowed, hackles rising. At the gorge's midpoint, they found a stone slab bridging the river 30 paces below. The slab looked ancient, carved with runes that had long since eroded. Raven motioned pause. "We cross one pair at a time," she instructed. Kalen and Darius tested footing first, crossing with measured steps. The bridge held. Lyana and Lucian went next, wolves trotting ahead. Midway, Lucian heard the whisper again. Fraud. This time he laughed, the sound echoing against stone. He squeezed Lyana's hand and answered the whisper aloud. "I am full of flaws. She loves me anyway." The wind gusted, swirling mist into loops that fizzled out. On the far side, Liora and Lyrian crossed. Halfway, Liora glimpsed the crying woman on cliff shelf above, head bowed. Her heart jolted, but Lyrian tugged her close. "Look at me," he said. She did. The vision flickered. Gone. Wolves barked victory. When all company had crossed, they found an overhang where cliff wall curved, forming dry shelter. They lit a fire here, the first open flames since leaving the ruins. Sparks drifted into dusky sky. Aiden roasted bread on a stick, face glowing apricot in firelight. Lucian sat with Lyana pressed to his side, her head on his shoulder. The copper ring caught the flames, glinting. She noticed and smiled. "Still shining," she said. "It will shine brighter in daylight tomorrow," he replied. She traced the weave. And brighter still in moonlight. He kissed her there, hair tickling his lips. Across circle, Lyrian strummed Kieran's lute, hesitant but steady. Liora leaned against him, humming melody she'd learned as child. Their wolves lay at their feet, heads on paws, tails thumping softly and beat with tune. Raven and Lucian the Lycan king shared whispers near fire's edge. Thalos and the shaman sat back to back, eyes closed, sensing currents. Kalen sharpened his spear, steel rasping stone in calm rhythm. Darius sorted arrows, humming Kieran's song off-key. Ysara stitched a torn hem on Aiden's sleeve while the boy slumped half asleep. The night deepened. Wind moaned across gorge mouth, but campfire warmth held strong. Wolves stood sentinel at intervals, silhouettes against ember glow. A heavy quiet settled, yet it was a peace filled with breath and heartbeat, not fear. Lyana spoke into hush. Do you ever wonder why fear tries so hard? Lucian thought, then answered softly. Because fear has never met love it cannot break until now. Their wolves murmured praise. She pressed a kiss to his jaw. Her ring glowed faint as if copper remembered sunrise. Liora watched embers rise like stars leaning into Lyrian. We will gather hope like sparks, she said, and carry them into night. He twined fingers through hers. Then night will glitter. Their wolves brushed against each other, silent, but content. Above, clouds parted to reveal a crescent moon. Its pale light slanted down, turning cliff walls silver. In the reflection of the fire, 4 rings, copper, grass, heather sprig bound by twine, and bluebell tucked into braid, glimmered like small beacons. Sometime after midnight, the ground shivered once but softly, as though acknowledging their vow rather than challenging it. Wolves lifted heads, sniffed, and lay back down. The offbeat pulse did not return. Morning would bring the climb out of the gorge and the march toward Stonehearth Outpost, where allies waited, and Varric's next play would be revealed. Yet in the hush of flickering flames, hearts beat steady. Ringed by wolves and love written into prophecy echoed louder than any shadow's whisper. Under the crescent moon, Lyana whispered the final words of the day. We dance with shadows, but we do not belong to them. Lucian answered, voice low. We belong to each other. Liora added, and to hope. Lyrian finished, and to every dawn we choose. 4 wolves pressed close, tails meeting in star shape on dusty ground. Above them the moon sailed on, bearing silent witness to hearts that glowed like coals, steady, fierce, and untarnished. The climb towards Stonehearth began in a hush, broken only by bootsteps crunching brittle leaves and the distant call of a hawk riding cold air. Sunlight barely touched the ridge, slanting gold between tall pines that crowded the trail, like silent watchers. Frost clung to needles, releasing puffs of glitter when the wind breathed. Lyana walked beside Lucian, their shoulders brushing with each uneven step. They spoke little, yet every glance, every squeeze of fingers, carried more meaning than stories could hold. Her wolf patted at her heel, thoughts a steady hum. Feel the quiet, not the fear. Lucian's wolf answered with a gentle echo. Quiet keeps the heart steady. Behind them, Liora and Lyrian followed, their pace instinctively matched. Occasionally, Liora's cloak snagged on low bramble. Lyrian freed it with fingers that lingered at her waist before falling away. She caught his hand once, bringing it to her lips just long enough for warmth to spark between them. Their wolves trotted close, tails brushing, sharing mute comfort. Kalen led the line, spear tip glinting. Darius drifted along the rear, sharp eyes scanning tree shadows for movement. Between them, Aiden marched with earnest focus, cradling the small sapphire glass lantern Thalos had entrusted to him. The blue flame inside never flickered. Clouds gathered as the path rose higher, shouldering the sun aside until light thinned to a silver glow. With every step, the air grew colder, the ground firmer, as though the mountain itself hardened against whatever followed. A soft whisper seemed to swirl at ankle height, unformed words snatched away before meaning landed. Lucian felt one slide across skin like smoke. He squeezed Lyana's hand. "Did you hear anything?" She shook her head but frowned. Her wolf murmured, "Wind only, yet stay aware." Lucian's wolf added, "Echoes, not voices." They paused at a narrow ledge to rest. Below, the valley lay draped in morning fog that looked almost solid, a sea of pearl. Kieran set his pack down and strummed a quiet chord, fingers stiff from cold, yet determined to weave comfort. Ella passed small wedges of oat bread mixed with honey and pine nuts. Aidan offered the lantern for warmth, and Lyana bent toward its glow, grateful for the brief kiss of heat on her cheeks. Raven moved among them, resting a reassuring hand on each shoulder. She said nothing, but her presence steadied more than words. When Thalos declared the pass safe, they climbed again. Stonehearth revealed itself not all at once, but in murmurs. First a glimpse of weather-dark walls jutting from cliffside, then a flash of watchtower roof where a banner snapped in wind, and finally the full breadth of the fortress pressing against the sky, smoke curling from chimneys that glowed red at their tips. Snowflakes drifted in slow spirals as if drawn to the heat of torches lining the main gate. Lyana released a breath she hadn't known she held. Lucian felt the tension along her shoulders and ran his thumb along her knuckles. "We're close," he said. "Shelter. At least for a night." Her answer was a quiet hum of agreement. Guard wolves padded forward at their approach, hackles half raised until Raven stepped ahead, her presence commanding gentleness. Gatekeepers recognized her sigil and raised the portcullis with a groan of old iron. Inside the courtyard, warmth rolled from braziers bigger than water troughs. Stewards hurried up with thick furs and flagons of mulled berry wine, but even comfort carried an undertone of vigilance. Outpost warriors nodded greeting, yet kept hands near hilts and eyes on every shadow. Lyana's wolf sniffed, catching scent of iron and old ash. Lucian's wolf tasted the air and thought, "This place remembers battle." Snow-dusted cloaks as they crossed to the main hall. Ancient carvings lined the entrance. Wolves intertwined, moons eclipsing, vines twining around runes that pulsed faint silver when the twins neared. A ripple of murmur rose among resident guards who had heard rumors but not witnessed bond magic. Elder Saria awaited inside the threshold. Blindfold of deep blue silk hid her eyes, but her expression was serene. She reached out, Raven guiding her hand to Lyana first, then Liora. "I felt your hearts from half a valley away," she said, voice soft yet unwavering. "Hold them steady tonight, and the mountain will answer." Servants led the companions to their quarters, modest stone rooms warmed by small hearths, windows narrow but deep, furs laid over carved wooden beds. Lucian set packs on a bench and closed the door behind him and Lyana. For a moment, they stood in quiet, the hush broken only by the crackle of a single log catching flame. Snow drifted past the window in lazy curves. Lyana unfastened her cloak and hung it near the hearth, shaking stray flakes onto flagstones. Lucian approached, hands hidden behind his back. "There's something of mine I want you to carry," he said. He knelt, not as knight before queen, but partner before partner, presenting a sheathed dagger. Its grip was wrapped in black leather, pommel set with a small moonstone twin to the pendant she wore. He drew the blade an inch, so light skated along silver steel etched with faint spiral runes. "This belonged to the first guardian of my line," he explained, eyes steady. "It was forged with oath to protect those the heart chooses. I choose you." Lyana's breath caught. Inside her, wolf and woman both felt the weight of the gift. She knelt with him, pressing her hands over his around the hilt. "Then I carry not a weapon, but your promise," she said. Tears shimmered, but did not fall. Their wolves sat side by side, tails sweeping floor in quiet rhythm. In another wing, Liora entered a circular chamber with a single window looking over sheer cliff and endless sky. A hush hung in the space as if time had stepped outside. Lyrian stepped in behind her, closing door with gentle click. Snow eddied beyond the glass, flakes tapping like curious knuckles. He removed his cloak and draped it around her shoulders, drawing the fabric close until the scent of pine and hearth embers surrounded her. She leaned back against his chest, letting weight settle. "This place feels like the edge of everything," she whispered. "Edges show how wide the world truly is," he answered, resting chin atop her head. She turned and their foreheads met. "When fear says I'll disappear, tell me again I shine." "I'll tell you every dawn," Lyrian promised. He traced the curve of her ring crafted from grass and flower stems, amazed it remained green. His wolf spoke inside. "Her light guides you." Leora's wolf responded, "His stillness roots you." Their lips met softly, warmth blooming against winter air. In the main hall, Raven convened with Thalos the shaman, Lucian the lichen king, and Elder Saria. Carved wolves seemed to lean from pillars, listening. Torches guttered whenever the wind howled down chimneys, and in those moments the faint glow of runes on the walls brightened as though catching breath. Thalos laid out maps showing leyline fractures, thin red ink veins threading across mountains. "Varric pulls at them here," he explained, tapping a mark east of Stonehearth. "If he severs enough, bonds fray." Elder Saria's blindfold dipped as she bowed her head, sensing something unseen. "Tonight the twins speak vows," she said. "Their words will weave through these lines like new thread. If they are clear, Varric's tear will slow." The shaman added quietly, "But only if love outweighs fear." Outside, Kalen drilled a squad of outpost warriors, spear arcs slicing chilled air. Darius coached younger archers atop wall walk, adjusting stances against gusting wind. Aiden carried logs to smithy where Isara mended armor links. Kieran tuned lute near the fire pit, playing a melody hopeful, yet edged with solemn resolve. Ella stitched fresh cloth charms, sliding them into pockets of each companion's cloak. Wolves paced battlements, breath fogging. Evening settled quick, cloaking mountaintop in violet twilight. Snow fell heavier, flakes thick as petals. Bells rang low, calling all to supper in the great hall. The twins and mates entered to find long tables set with root stew, crusty bread, and mulled cider steaming in clay mugs. Despite the mood, conversation warmed the space. Stories traded about near tumbles on ice. Kalen's exaggerated retelling of Aiden scaring off a squirrel ambush, and Kieran's song of old mountain legends that coaxed shy smiles from guards. After the meal, torches were snuffed one by one as the company followed Raven to the open terrace. Snow carpeted the stones in thin sheet, crunching under boots. In sky above, the full moon climbed, huge and pale, silvering every breath. A hush fell over assembled wolves and humans alike. Elder Saria stood near parapet, eyes hidden, hands lifted as though feeling shape of moonlight. The shaman spoke quietly, "This terrace will remember what is spoken." Lyana and Lucian stepped forward first, wolves flanking, breath clouded in cold air. Lucian took the blade from her belt, holding it by flat steel so hilt faced her. "Lyana," he said, voice steady despite swirl of snow. "I once believed protecting you meant shielding you from every hurt. Now I learn protecting means trusting your fire to burn beside mine." He pressed the hilt to her palms. "If my strength falters, your name will keep me standing." Lyana wrapped fingers around blade, tears bright. "Lucian," she answered, "I was whole before, but with you I am alive. Even if your light dims, I will be your flame." They leaned close, foreheads touching. Their rings glowed, copper shimmering orange, dagger runes flaring silver. Liora and Lyrian took their place. He brushed snow from her hair, fingers trembling only slightly. "Liora," he said, voice low but clear. "You showed me that quiet can be stronger than thunder. If shadow splits the sky, I'll find you by heart. She cupped his cheek. Lyrian, I feared being unseen until your eyes made me real. I see myself clearer with you than alone. Her grass flower ring glowed emerald. His bluebell braid shimmered cobalt. Wolves howled soft, harmonizing. As vows resonated in cold air, runes carved into terrace stones pulsed faint blue, matching heartbeat of moon overhead. A sigh seemed to exhale from fortress walls, old stone welcoming new promise. Kaelin, Darius, Ella, and others bowed heads in silent witness. Raven wiped a tear. Lucian, the Lycan king's arm around her shoulders. Elder Saria lifted face to moon, whispering words no one caught. A sudden gust swept across terrace, snuffing a single torch. Wolves growled low, bodies tense. Snow spiraled faster, but vows held bright in eyes and rings. Lyana felt Lucian's hand steady in hers. Liora felt Lyrian's pulse calm. Wind calmed, flame relit itself. Shadows along parapet retreated. Their vow finished, the twins and mates embraced. The company dispersed slowly, warmth of connection outweighing cold. As they turned toward hall, Lyana glanced back at moon hanging like silver promise. Her wolf's voice echoed. Vow spoken, love sealed. Lucian's wolf added, let darkness learn. Lucian closed the terrace door behind them, shutting out the snow-filled hush and the low murmur of guards changing posts. The corridor lanterns cast mellow gold across granite walls, turning wandering flakes into sparks before they melted. Lyana felt the hush settle deeper inside her chest, no longer the stillness of fear, but the fragile quiet that follows any vow freely spoken. Her hand still tingled where Lucian's dagger hilt had rested. She traced the copper ring and found it warm as though it remembered moonlight. Their wolves padded ahead, claws clicking softly on stone. Lucian's wolf glanced back, nose twitching with amused pride. Her flame still flickers bright. It teased. Lyana's wolf answered, his courage keeps it fed. Lucian brushed fingertips against Lyana's wrist, then guided her toward the private chamber assigned to them. A guard bowed as they passed, eyes lingering on the faint light she peeking from their rings. Inside, the room glowed with heat from a hearth built into the cliffside wall. Furs lay piled on a carved bench. Thick tapestries softened hard corners. A single window, narrow and deep, framed a sweep of snowy pines bending under wind. Lucian set his hand on the dagger now hanging from Lyana's belt. I keep thinking of my ancestor forging this, he said, voice low. He believed a promise could be hammered into steel. Lyana slid arms around his waist. Then he would be glad you forged yours in words first. She rose on toes, kissing him slow. The warmth between them outshone the hearth, melting the last slivers of chill lingering after the terrace. A gentle rap sounded. Ella entered with a tray of mulled berry tea and honeyed bread. She set it near the fire, cheeks bright with energy despite the long climb. Thought you'd need something sweet to settle nerves, she said. Lyana squeezed her hand in thanks. Lucian offered a grateful smile. Ella lingered, eyes shining. That vow. She swiped a tear. You two reminded everyone why we fight. Lucian's wolf gave a low, approving chuff. Ella turned to go but paused. Keep the door barred tonight, she advised, voice softer. Wind keeps blowing out torches near the eastern wall. Lucian nodded. When she left, Lyana exhaled. Even the wind seems to test us. He poured tea for them both, the spiced steam curling upward. Then let it try. We hold. Across the hall, Liora and Lyrian entered their own chamber as Kaelin finished a round of evening inspection. He nodded to them, spear resting against shoulder, but his eyes remained sharp on the corridor shadows. Inside, a small brazier glowed, filling the space with cedar scent. Liora set her cloak aside and shook snow from her braids. Lyrian traced a loose petal-shaped strand behind her ear. You still shine, he whispered. even covered in frost. She caught his hand, pressing a kiss to his palm. Her wolf sprawled near the fire, tail sweeping stone. Lyrian's wolf settled opposite, eyes half closed, yet vigilant. Liora drew Lyrian toward the window slit. Together they looked out at moonlit drifts swirling between ramparts. "I keep thinking of that crying woman in the mist," she admitted. "Every time fear pressed close, I felt her." Lyrian leaned forehead to hers. "Maybe she is the part of history still grieving." We answered tonight. Perhaps she will finally rest. His hands framed her face, thumbs brushing cheeks. If not, we'll meet her again together. Their kiss tasted of berry tea and new courage. While the mates settled into brief peace, the great hall filled with the hum of planning. Raven, Lucian the Lycan king, Darius and Isara pored over Varric's latest movements with several outpost captains. Kalen arrived, spear now dusted with frost. "Eastern torches still gutter," he reported. "Wind only, but it aims for flame like it has purpose." Darius frowned. "Or someone shaping it." Elder Saria entered, guided by Thalos. The seer lifted her head, nostrils flaring as if tasting the air. "Fire is breath," she murmured. "When breath falters, hearts must stay steady so the flame can rise." She turned toward the king. "Your children's vows have threaded new lines into this fortress. Varric will test them soon, but testing proves strength." Aiden slipped into the hall, lantern cradled. The blue flame within pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. He held it up to Saria. "Does this help?" The seer smiled. Though blindfolded, her expression warmed. "It does, little spark. Keep it close tonight." The boy beamed, retreating to Ella's side. Midway through the night, a low moan rose outside the walls, wind threading narrow gaps like sorrowful flute. Torches along the eastern battlement guttered again, several failing. Guards hustled to relight them, only for flames to sputter blue then fade. Kalen led a squad to shore up lanterns, eyes scanning treeline. Snow danced sideways in swirling sheets, but beyond that, darkness felt oddly alive. His wolf, patrolling beside him, paused, ears flattening. Something watches. Kalen's heart thumped hard, but he kept voice calm for the guards. "Stay close. Shadows can't cross steady light." Inside Liana's chamber, a sudden chill snuffed 2 candles. She and Lucian lifted heads from shared pillow. His wolf rose, fur bristling. Lyana reached for the dagger at bedside. Before fear could seed, a low thought flowed from her wolf. "Breathe warmth." She exhaled slowly. Lucian matched her. Their rings glimmered faintly, and the candles flared back to life. The chill retreated like tide. Lucian rested his forehead against hers. "He's tugging again," he whispered. "We hold," she answered. Same moment. Liora woke trembling, a whisper grazing her ear, alone. Lyrian stirred, pulling her closer. "I'm here," he murmured into her hair. Her grassflower ring brightened, pulse sinking to his. The whisper fizzled like steam, leaving only silence. She sighed. Her wolf's mind voice soothed, echoing the vow. "His heart finds you." She slept again, safer beneath his arm. Down in the forge yard, Darius stoked the main furnace to keep metal workable. The flames hissed green for a heartbeat, spitting sparks that twisted into feather shapes before winking out. Isara gasped, grabbing his arm. "Varric's sign." Darius muttered a curse and shoveled fresh coal. Flames settled gold. "Let him watch," he said. "We're not hiding." He hammered a glowing spearhead, the ring of metal singing against anvils. Echoes of the blow traveled corridors like steel-lined heartbeat. Close to midnight, Raven climbed a staircase to a narrow lookout. Snow crusted the stone rail, but she leaned into the chill, tracing shapes of constellations above. Footsteps sounded. Elder Saria joined, guided by Thalos. "What do you see?" the seer asked. Raven described the sky. a ribbon of cloud across the moon, stars flickering brighter each time wind howled. Saria smiled. Stars pulsed a heartbeat of prophecy tonight. The vow breathes. Raven allowed herself a soft laugh. Then let it roar tomorrow. Below, Aiden huddled in Ella's lap near a brazier. He stared at lantern flame, watching it throb. Kieran strummed a lullaby until Boy's eyelids drooped. As he drifted, Aiden whispered, "The flame listens." Ella met Kieran's gaze over his head. "He hears more than we know," she said. The night stretched, tension ebbing and flowing like a tide against cliff. Sometimes wind punched torches cold. Sometimes runes flared in answer, pushing darkness back. In their chambers, the twins lay entwined, sharing whispered memories, childhood moments, first sparks of recognition, promises of morning walks after war ends. The wolves kept silent watch inside their minds, occasionally offering words that felt older than language. Stand heart to heart, dawn comes. Toward dawn, snow stopped. Sky lightened to pewter, then blush rose. Torches burned steadily, wind calmed. Kaelin sent word that no intruders breached the wall. Yet in the forge yard, Isara found blackened feather ash on an anvil. She bared teeth in grim smile. He can watch, but he cannot enter. Breakfast in the great hall felt brighter than the heavy night suggested. Bread steamed, berry jam glowed like rubies under torchlight. Aiden's eyes sparkled as he recounted seeing torchlight change colors. Kaelin nodded solemnly as though acknowledging a scouting report. Lyana laughed, ruffling the boy's hair. Lucian encouraged him to craft that courage into story songs, earning a grin. Liora teased Lyrian about bluebell petals still tangled in his braid. He left them, claiming they brought luck. Their wolves lay at foot of benches, accepting scraps. After the meal, Lucian the Lycan King led a short council. "We leave 2 afternoons from now," he announced. "We march east to Broken Moon Pass, meet forces at dawn following." Kaelin asked about defenses here. Darius volunteered to leave 5 archers to hold Stonehearth alongside resident guard. Thalos interjected. "Stonehearth stands on crosspoint of ley lines. Leaving twins pulls shadow away. That is good." Elder Saria agreed. "But we weave protective sigils here before departure." The shaman directed companions to gather thistle, frost fern, and quartz dust. Even Aiden joined, filling pockets with herbs. Kieran composed a chant as they worked, simple words about hope binding stone. As they scattered sigil dust in corridors, walls glowed faint, sealing the warmth inside. In mid-afternoon, Lyana and Lucian found a quiet alcove behind the library. Shelves carved into rock held scrolls older than any kingdom. Lucian unrolled one dusty parchment, revealing a depiction of twin wolves beneath crescent moons. He traced a clawed paw print in ink, marveling. "History wrote us before we were born," he said. Lyana rested chin on his shoulder. "Then let us write it new." They sealed words with a kiss, unhurried, soft. Their wolves leaned shoulder to shoulder, eyes half-lidded. Liora and Lyrian found Elder Saria in a small chapel carved into mountain's heart. Crystal bowls hummed softly as mountain wind passed through narrow vents. Saria invited them to sit. She held their joined hands, her sightless gaze gentle. "Your vow glows bright," she said. "Yet fear may still whisper. When it does, speak your vow aloud again. Love hates silence." Liora promised they would. Lyrian thanked her, voice thick with emotion. That evening, snow fell again, but softly, like a benediction. The twins and mates walked ramparts, watching flakes drift through torchlight. Lucian told Lyana the story of his first sword lesson, flailing until he nearly knocked teacher unconscious. She laughed, doubling, the sound echoing under battlements. Liora recited a poem she wrote in childhood about brave rabbits. Lyrian's soft laughter warmed her cheeks. Their wolves chased snow, snapping at flakes like playful pups. When night deepened, they gathered again at terrace. The torches burned steady now, Runes along walls pulsed faint gold every time a couple shared a smile. Elder Saria listened to snowfall and whispered, "The vow is a beacon." Thalos nodded. Varric must decide now. Strike and be burned by love, or slink and rot in shadow. As everyone drifted to chambers, a final hush settled. Lucian barred their door, then turned, pulling Lyana into arms. Fire crackled. He whispered, "Rest. Tomorrow we ready for darkest road yet." She nodded, laying head on his chest. "We'll meet it together." They slept entwined. Wolves curled at their feet. Near dawn, a distant boom shuddered through mountain bones. It did not wake many. The fortress only sighed. Runes brightened briefly, then fell back to dim glow. Wolves opened eyes, ears twitching, but sensed no breach. The boom was sky-splitting far east, storm beginning to gather. Lyana's wolf whispered to Lucian's, "Soon." Lucian's wolf answered, "Ready." Morning sun spilled gold across snow, haloing the fortress in fiery promise. Breakfast steam curled upward through hall rafters as companions prepared for march. Lucian tied dagger at Lyana's belt. She adjusted his cloak. Liora wove a new flower ring to replace last night's now wilted. Lyrian slipped it on willingly. Each wolf nuzzled its human's hand. Before gates opened, Raven addressed them. Love spoke. Stone listened. Today we move with that voice in every step. Kaelin thumped spear to ground. Darius drew arrow. Salute. Aiden lifted lantern. Blue flame. Bright. The twins and mates walked forward, heart steady beneath fresh vows. Snow crunched beneath boots, torch smoke curled behind. From walls, runes glowed farewell. Far beyond pines, dark clouds massed like bruises on horizon. Varric's unseen pull rippled across whitened fields. But in the hearts of two pairs of twins, love burned, rings glowed, and wolves carried courage. The storm could gather all it wished, their vow rode ahead like sunrise. Snowflakes fluttered like loose feathers as the second morning at Stone Hearth drew on, leaving a soft coat of white on every ledge and battlement. Smoke from the forges climbed in slow spirals, turning silver in the slanted daylight. Inside the training courtyard, Kaelin arranged wooden practice dummies in a loose circle. His breath steamed as he hammered stakes into frozen ground while Aiden trotted behind him, handing pegs and humming the tune Kieran had played the night before. Each thud of Kaelin's mallet echoed through the stone walls, a heartbeat to gather minds and keep cold doubts at bay. Lyana emerged from the inner stair, tugging her fur-lined gloves into place. Lucian followed, adjusting the new leather baldric that held his ancestor's dagger snug against his spine. Their wolves padded ahead, sniffing the snowy air with quiet delight. Kaelin waved. "Shadows prefer corners," he called. "We'll keep none." Lyana raised an eyebrow, amused. "Is that why you're turning the courtyard into a maze?" Kaelin offered a thin grin. "If they slip past runes, they'll meet us ready." Lucian helped Kaelin push the last dummy upright, shoulders flexing beneath his cloak. Lyana caught herself watching the smooth strength of him, feeling warmth spark beneath layers of wool. Her wolf whispered in her thoughts, "Flame answers flame." She stepped closer, brushing snow from his hair. "I still feel last night in my bones," she murmured. "The vow keeps humming." Lucian slipped an arm around her waist, pulling her close despite Kaelin's smirk. "Let it hum," he said softly. "It's music I want forever." Across the yard, Liora and Lyrian arrived with Darius and Isara, each carrying bundles of practice spears. Leora's cheeks were flushed pink from the cold, a strand of dark hair stuck to her forehead. Lyrian lifted gloved fingers to brush it back, thumb lingering along her brow. Their wolves bumped shoulders in greeting. Darius set down the spears, clapping Lyrian's shoulder. "Nothing like sparring to keep winter out," he said. Isara spread a cloth on a stone bench, arranging salve pots and strips of linen. And nothing like salve to keep bruises from turning purple, she added with a wry smile. Kieran's lute sounded from overhead walkway, a bright scale sliding into playful melody. Ella leaned on the parapet beside him, calling down, "Try not to crack each other's ribs before the march." Aidan lifted his stick spear in salute. "We crack shadows, not ribs," he declared, voice still high with youth, but edged with purpose. Laughter bounced off walls, warm, despite frost. Training began with drills. Lucian demonstrated footwork, sweeping low arcs through fresh snow. Lyana mirrored him, dagger flashing with silver promise. Each parry and spin drew breath from watching guards, those unused to seeing bondmates move in perfect rhythm without cue. Lyana feinted left. Lucian ducked beneath her arm, twirled behind, and tapped her collar with wooden staff Kaelin handed him seconds before. Light contact, deliberate. She whirled, cheeks flushed, eyes bright, then lunged to lock her dagger gently against his throat. They froze, foreheads almost touching, breath mingling. Wolves circled them, tails high, pleased. Liora paired with Lyrian across the circle. He guided her grip on the practice spear, voice gentle despite the firm correction. "Lower your shoulder. The snow drags footwork slower than grass." She nodded, adjusting stance. He attacked in measured thrusts and she deflected, staff meeting spear with controlled crack. Onlookers watched as her movement smoothed each pass. When Lyrian overreached intentionally, she danced sideward, swung spear butt, and caught him behind the knee. He dropped to one knee in the snow, laughing wolf-barking approval. Liora extended a hand. "I shine, remember?" Lyrian clasped it, smiling up. Blindingly. Kaelin clapped, satisfied. Enough finesse. Time for wind drills. He divided them into pairs, Lucian with Darius, Lyana with Kaelin, Liora with Isara, Lyrian with an outpost captain. Snow kicked up under shuffling feet, spears rapped against shields, and laughter blended with grunts as muscles warmed. Wolves wove between combatants, sometimes darting in to tug at a trailing cloak edge playfully, other times sitting sentinel beside Aidan, who shouted imaginary commands from atop a stacked crate. Over an hour passed before Thalos appeared on the far stair, staff glimmering pale blue. Training ceased at once. Breath steamed heavily as everyone turned. The elder's expression was calm, but firm. "The runes on the southern wall stir. Elder Seria requests the twins." Lucian and Lyana exchanged a glance. So did Liora and Lyrian. They sheathed practice weapons, brushed snow off cloaks, and followed Thalos. Wolves trotted close, ears half back as though listening to underground rumble only they sensed. Elder Seria waited in a dim corridor where torchlight flickered uncertainly against carved wolf reliefs. Snow sneaked through arrow-slit windows, dusting floor stones. Raven and Lucian the Lycan King stood nearby, arms folded against chill. The seer inclined her head as the twins approached. "The mountain whispers," she said. "It wants your voices again." She gestured to a section of wall where runes faintly glowed. Each symbol flickered like a pulse just out of sync with a human heartbeats. Thalos raised his staff. The crystal atop brightened. "Place your palms," he instructed. Lyana and Lucian stepped first, hands meeting cold stone. Liora and Lyrian mirrored opposite side. A mild jolt traveled up their arms, not painful but startling, like dipping hands into clear stream. Wolves sat behind them, tails sweeping floor slowly, alert yet calm. A rumble traveled down the corridor, faint but present. Snow from high ledge cascaded through window slit in powdery spill. Elder Seria tilted her head. Varric claws the lines again, bending echoes of truth. "Your vow is thread. Anchor it here." Lyana inhaled, eyes closing. She pictured Lucian's laugh, the way his brow furrowed when thinking of old stories, the warmth of his promise. Silver light seeped beneath her fingers, runes brightening in response. Lucian did the same, thinking of Lyana's infectious grin, her stubborn refusal to bow to fear, the new copper ring that pulsed against his chest. The rune line straightened, flicker edging toward steady glow. On other side, Liora and Lyrian crafted silent memories. The grass-flower ring, a quiet brookside kiss, shared dreams of morning fields free of shadow. Their palms tingled. The runes there thrummed golden. Thalos nodded. Truth, answers. He turned to Raven. Hold this corridor. The heart of fortress beats here now. Outside, snow thickened into heavy flakes. Guards on battlement relit torches with difficulty. Flame shifted between blue and gold. Unsettled. Kalen rejoined wall patrol, spear now topped with fresh-edged head Isara forged last night. He spotted movement, just tree limbs swaying, but he kept stance firm. His wolf prowled beside, huffing at swirling powder. Kieran's lute sang a bolstering tune from below. Ella wove another charm, fingers stiff but sure. Dusk crept earlier as if night needed more room to stretch. Dinner was a simpler affair than the previous evening, thick soup of root vegetables, nut bread still warm. Conversation buzzed low, predictions of Root East, speculation about Varric's claws. Amid this, romance glowed steady. Lucian fed Lyana a spoonful of soup cooled by a breath, her smile meeting his. Lyrian laughed softly when Liora dabbed broth from his chin with thumb. Wolves lay beneath benches, heads resting on paws, amber eyes reflecting hearth flames. After supper, the shaman asked the twins to gather once more at terrace for breath work, a ritual to weave vow into breath so fear couldn't steal voice. Snow fell in quieter flakes now, sky a deep violet. Torches burned normal orange at last, reflecting in thousands of crystals coating stone. Elder Saria waited, sensing each step by echo. She gestured them into two lines facing each other, Lyana opposite Liora, Lucian opposite Lyrian. Wolves formed outer ring again. The shaman guided them through slow inhalations, exhaling names of each beloved into evening air. With every exhale, a faint wisp rose, twisting into glowing script before dissolving. Lyana breathed Lucian's name. Silver swirl drifted upward. Lucian breathed Lyana's. Copper spark followed. Liora whispered Lyrian's, pale green glow. Lyrian spoke. Liora. Blue-white wisp. Above, the full moon peeked behind thin cloud, illuminating the dance of names until air shimmered with soft light. Snowflakes paused, suspended as though listening. Thalos tapped his staff once. Your breath weaves the line Varric cannot cut. Elder Saria lifted her face, inhaling slowly. He feels frustration. Her voice held a hint of satisfaction. Raven stepped forward. Then, let him feel it longer. Lucian, the Lichen King, placed a hand over each twin's shoulder, pride fierce in his eyes. You strengthen more than prophecy. You strengthen every heart here. Night deepened. Wolves stretched, yawned, then resumed watch along parapet. Guards rotated seamlessly, murmuring comparisons between tonight's calm torchlight and last night's rebellion. Kalen finished final perimeter and lingered top of tower, gazing east where shadows pooled like ink. His wolf sat beside him, eyes reflecting starlight. He heard faint, distant clap of thunder, though no clouds flashed. He stirs, he told the wolf. It snorted, tail twitching. Then let him come. Inside private chambers, warmth settled. Lyana removed cloak, hair damp from snowmelt. Lucian sat on furs, watching her. Every breath with you felt like armor, he said. She knelt beside him, pressing her forehead to his. And every glance from you felt like home. Their wolves curled together near hearth, breathing slow synchrony. Liora braided new ring from golden strands of meadowgrass Kieran found in stores, weaving tiny shards of quartz into pattern. She slid it onto Lyrian's finger, eyes bright. He turned her hand over and kissed palm. Again, she whispered. When fear rises, remind me. He promised. Always. Long after midnight, wind shifted. A hollow moan tunneled through Stonehearth's watchtowers. Torches flickered but held steady. Snow ceased. In the hush, a single note rang from Kieran's lute in his sleeper's grip, string plucked by breeze or unseen hand. The note lingered, then faded. Lyana woke, heart calm, listening. The pulse of the mountain felt different, as if breath drawn in held a promise, not a threat. Her wolf stretched inside mind, offering single thought. Vow holds. She smiled, drifting back to sleep in Lucian's arms. At dawn, light spilled coral pink over mountain ridge. Snow sparkled like shattered pearls. Stonehearth's walls gleamed, runes etched in them trembling with soft readiness. Breakfast bustle filled hall, strapping packs, stowing weapons, Kaelin giving last-minute pointers to new recruits. Darius checked arrow fletchings while Aiden brushed frost from lantern. Lucian secured his dagger, kissing Lyana once, twice, unable to stop. She laughed, cheeks glowing, then pressed her forehead to his. Let's meet tomorrow with the same laughs. Liora fastened her flower ring, tucking braid under cloak, and squeezed Lyrian's hand. He replied with gentle pull, bringing her into a quiet kiss that felt like sunrise itself. Outside gates, Raven addressed the company. Breath fogged in pink light. We march east. We carry our vow and our strength. We carry each other. Lucian, the Lycan King's voice followed, deeper. Fear hunts, but love walks first. A murmur of agreement rolled through ranks. Wolves barked once, paws stamping packed ice. The gates groaned open. Cold wind rushed, but it smelled of pine and promise. The twins and their mates led the way, wolves at heels, hearts still humming with vow. Behind, torches along walls flared white, then settled to steady gold, not flickering, not dimming, but holding. Elder Saria stood at parapet, blindfold fluttering. She lifted her face, whispering into dawn. Her words were lost to wind, but the mountain seemed to nod. As they crossed the drawbridge, snow crunched beneath boots in unified rhythm. Ahead, eastward sky held a seam of dark clouds, bruised with storm. Yet edges glowed where sunrise pressed through, turning even the storm banks to streaks of rose. Lyana squeezed Lucian's fingers. Storm before vow, she said, voice low but sure, and vow before light. Lucian squeezed back, smile steady, and love before everything. Liora heard and touched Lyrian's wrist, echoing, before everything. Wolves lifted heads to wind, howling soft harmony that rolled ahead down mountain pass, announcing to shadows that the heart-led march had begun. Mist rolled over the ridge like slow-moving breath, sliding between pine trunks and feathering across slabs of ancient stone. Even before the party descended into Silver Mist Valley, a hush settled over every heart, as though the land itself listened. Snow no longer fell. Instead, the air carried tiny beads of water that clung to furs and hair before drifting away in thin ribbons of vapor. Lyana paused on the last outcrop, eyes sweeping the wide basin below. At its center, clusters of twisted willow and towering elms ringed a hollow threaded by a pale blue stream. Beyond the trees, half-buried ruins glimmered through veil-thick haze, arched doorways without walls, toppled pillars painted with lichen, and a single circle of standing stones that seemed to flicker at the corner of sight. Lucian came to stand beside her. He said nothing, but his gloved fingers slipped between hers, warm and careful. Her wolf, Kylus, breathed a thought inside her mind. Ground remembers lovers and ghosts both. Lyana answered silently, then squeezed Lucian's hand. He looked at her, understanding crossing his eyes without need for words. His wolf rumbled soft approval. Behind them, the line of companions picked their way down the slope. Liora walked with deliberate slowness, hand on the shoulder of Lyrian ahead, mist beating on her braids. Astriel, her wolf, trotted at her heel, nose low, nostrils flaring as though catching half-forgotten scents. Kaelin led, spear used more like a staff on the slippery descent. Aiden followed in his footprints, clutching the sapphire glass lantern that now burned a steady white flame. Darius and Izara guarded the rear, bows unstrung but close. When the valley floor finally met their boots, sound changed. Footfalls no longer cracked over snow. Instead, they sank into moss that glimmered silver-green beneath the mist. Even voices felt subdued, swallowed by damp air. Raven lifted her hood, scanning the dim grove, then motioned toward a cleft between two leaning pillars. "Camp there," she murmured, "close to water and walls enough for shelter." They set to work with quiet efficiency. Kalen directed Kaiden in clearing underbrush for tents. Darius hammered iron spikes into earth softened by centuries of moss, occasionally glancing toward the distant standing stones that winked in and out behind drifting fog. Kieran and Ella unfurled canvas, humming low to ease tension. The melody drifted more than carried. Wolves padded wide arcs through tree shadows, ears flicking at every rustle. From time to time, one would pause, head cocked, as if hearing voices too distant for human ears. No growls, only wary acknowledgement. Thalos planted his staff at the center of camp. Runes engraved along its shaft flashed pale, then settled into a steady glow. The shaman poured a ring of crushed quartz around the staff. "Boundary for hearts, not swords," she whispered to Lyana while sprinkling dust. Lyana nodded, feeling the stone pulse under her soles. Once tents stood and a small cook fire crackled, steam rising in tight spirals, Raven called for water. Lucian volunteered, beckoning Lyana. "Come with me," he said. "Spring's near, and I'd rather not drink what this mist leaves on leaves." Lyana agreed, grabbing 2 empty skins. Kalis brushed against her thigh as she started after Lucian. The wolf's mind voice murmured, "Watch roots. They remember." She acknowledged, then followed Lucian through a tangle of low ferns. Behind, Astriel nudged Liora, who was rolling out bed mats. "I'll find you," Liora whispered, stroking wolf ears before returning to her task. Lucian led by faint memory of Thalos's map. The mist thickened between trunks, painting the world in fading gradients of gray and pale green. They spoke only occasionally, small touches replacing conversation. After a dozen paces, the ground sloped and sound of water reached them. Slow drip, gentle rush, the hush of spring sliding between roots. A knotted willow parted to reveal a hollow under a split stone arch. There the spring bubbled clear as glass, casting faint blue light against twisted roots overhead. Fireflies blinked in lazy spirals, each glow reflecting in water like tiny starbursts. Lyana knelt first, dipping fingers into water colder than snowmelt, yet somehow soothing. Lucian crouched beside her, lifting a handful to sip. "Sweeter than I expected," he whispered. She smiled. "Magic taste like morning dew." She filled a skin, capped it, and set it aside. Lucian filled the second, then offered it to Kalis, who lapped gratefully. Silence grew thick but soft, as if the spring recognized vows spoken nights before and waited for them to continue. Lucian set aside the skin, then gently tugged at her gauntlet strap. She watched him slide leather from her wrist, patience in every movement. When he eased the heavier bracer from her forearm, she felt weight she hadn't noticed lift away. He looked up, brow furrowing. "You're trembling." She realized she was fatigue settling in after days of march and sleepless vigilance. Tears threatened behind her eyes. Lucian's wolf spoke inside him. "Hold her pieces until she rests inside her own heart again." He laid her gauntlets on moss, then pressed his palms to her shoulders. "Take a breath," he urged. She exhaled in a shudder. Words poured out, fear of losing him in the final battle, worry about Varric turning their love into weakness, dread that prophecy demanded more than any heart should pay. Lucian listened, every word sinking into him like rain on thirsty soil. He answered not with promises but with truth. "If prophecy claims us, We'll still choose each other in every breath until breath ends. She leaned into him, tears finally sliding free. He kissed her eyelids, then her cheeks tasting salt and relief. Her own hands rose, unhooking the clasp of his cloak, tugging until heavy wool slid from shoulders to damp earth. She peeled his leather cuirass away, fingers exploring lines of muscle beneath linen. Breath mingled in the cool, misted air. Fireflies drifted closer, their glow weaving gold thread between their bodies. They shed the rest of armor slowly, each buckle unfastened like releasing a fear. Underlayers followed until skin met skin, warm in cold valley light. Kalis and Lucian's wolf moved a polite distance beneath the willow, lying nose to nose, eyes half-lidded with trusting calm. Lyana stepped into the spring, gasping at the chill. Lucian joined her, water lapping at calves. They stood waist-deep, mist curling around shoulders. She ran fingers along his jaw, tracing the faint scar near his chin. "Even scars feel softer here," she murmured. "Then let this place remember us gentle," he answered. He lowered his mouth to hers. Kiss slow, reverent, deepening only when her hands slid up his back. Water rippled outward, blue light intensifying. The spring surface reflected their joined silhouettes like mirror to another realm. Their wolves' voices drifted softly. Kalis. Love chosen is love unbreakable. Lucian's wolf. Heart to heart, water carries promise into earth. Words faded as emotion surged beyond thought. Lucian lifted her, laying her back on smooth root jutting just above water. Moonlight spilled through branches into her hair. She pulled him down, breaths whisper fast as they became one with a tenderness born of vows and sleepless fear. Water splashed in gentle rhythm, fireflies blinking like approval. When quiet returned, they clung together, foreheads pressed, hearts thundering in tandem. No prophecy, no shadow, only breath and shared lifeblood pulsing in veins. They dressed slowly, helping one another with ties and buckles, sharing fleeting smiles. Armor felt lighter, as though forged anew by the spring. As they left, Lucian filled each skin once more. Lyana lingered to press her palm to water. It glowed under her touch, then stilled. Back at camp, dusk neared. Liora placed dried herbs in a kettle over fire, stirring until scent of lavender and mint drifted. Lyrian smiled, joining her. "You brew calm," he said. She laughed quietly. "Calm needs practice." She offered him the ladle to taste. He sipped, nodding approval. Astriel nuzzled her thigh. Amid comfort, a blur of shadow crossed Liora's vision. Suddenly she stood in an empty grove. No tents, no fire, no wolf. Mist thicker here, swallowing every sound. Panic spiked. "Lyrian," she called. Only her voice echoed. The illusion pressed cold into bones. A figure of mist formed ahead, herself, alone, eyes hollow. She tried to step back, but roots clutched her ankles. A thought flickered, forgotten. The words spun around like wind, pulling breath away. In reality, Lyrian saw her freeze, kettle slipping from grasp. He caught it before boiling water spilled, then cupped her face. Her eyes stared past him, unfocused. Astriel whined, pawing her cloak. Lyrian's wolf growled, a deep, chest-level vibration that rattled embers. Lyrian leaned close, heart pounding. He whispered the first line of a childhood dream Liora once shared in a low voice under a blanket of stars. "Bluebell fields by dawn, and you said you'd braid the sky." Her eyes blinked. Tears welled. Fog illusion shattered. Grove, tense, companions returned. She collapsed into his arms, sobbing. Astriel pressed muzzle into her lap. "I'm here," Lyrian murmured, rocking gently. She clutched him, voice breaking. "I thought you never knew me." He kissed her temple. "I know every breath." Their wolves lay beside them, tails overlapping. After tears eased, they moved to a moss-covered log near fire. Liora spoke all her small fears, fading into history, memories replaced by battle songs. Lyrian answered with small truths, the way her laugh bent him toward joy, how her silence taught him to listen, the curl of her fingers when she summoned courage. Darius and Isara sat across fire, listening while fletching arrows. Isara's hand rested on her abdomen unconsciously. Darius watched her with gentle pride. He leaned close, murmuring something. She smiled, squeezing his knee. Beyond, Kaelin returned from perimeter with Aiden. The boy pointed at shifting tree lines. They moved again, he insisted. Kaelin studied trunks now 20 paces nearer than before. Forest breathes funny, he said, gaze narrowing. His wolf circled the closest tree, sniffing bark, then huffed an uneasy note. Kieran and Ella approached the ruin's edge where carved stones protruded like broken teeth. Kieran traced ancient lyrics chiseled in flowing script. Bonds of heart, ignite the dawn. When he hummed the melody aloud, faint blue shimmer traced the letters and slipped underground toward the spring. Ella touched his elbow, eyes wide. Song remembers, she whispered. Night folded over valley, painting mist in silver streaks. Fireflies returned, thickening into gentle swarm above camp. The shaman asked everyone to gather near standing stones. Thallo stood with palms pressed to runes glowing faint. He spoke of ley lines shifting but slower now that love rethreaded them. Raven thanked the group, her voice carrying warmth tempered with resolve. Elder Saria sat on a stone bench, head tilted back, seeing beyond sight. She called Lyana and Liora forward. When they knelt, Saria's voice dropped to a hush only they heard. Your light will fracture, she warned. Only what you freely rebuild will withstand forever. Lyana felt Lucian's hand tighten on her shoulder. Liora reached for Lyrians. Wolves circled with low whines, absorbing warning. Later, while most slept, Lyana and Liora met by the sacred spring, drawn by shared unrest. Moonlight spilled on water, reflecting two faces half-shadowed. Kalis and Astriel sat silent guard. They spoke of Saria's message, of breaking and rebuilding. Lyana traced ripples with fingertip. If fracture comes, we hold shards together, she said. Liora nodded. Choice mends cracks. They clasped hands. Rings glowed softly. A hush fell. Water's surface darkened, moon winking out in reflection though still high overhead. A face emerged, pale, sharp, eyes like embers smothered by ash. Varric's reflection, more suggestion than flesh. His lips did not move, yet voice bled into their minds. Oily, smooth. I don't need to break your bond. Only make you doubt it. Fear is easier than steel. Kalis and Astriel leapt forward, snarling, but pause met only water. The image rippled, smiled, and vanished. Spring light rebrightened. Wolves' growls faded to low rumbles. Lyana's breath shook. Liora's pulse hammered. They pressed foreheads together, drawing strength. He can't reach us, Lyana whispered. Liora answered, not past choice. Back in tents, they woke their mates, sharing vision in hushed voices. Lucian listened, jaw tight, then kissed Lyana's brow. Let him cast doubts, he said. We answer with yes. Lyrian pulled Liora close. Doubt dies where love speaks. Wolf bodies pressed against their humans, warmth and oath in fur and breath. Outside, the valley mist churned as though stirred by a coming storm, yet campfire burned steady. The spring pulsed once, then glowed brighter, as if absorbing fear and returning quiet courage. Stars shone above, clear between branches, their light reflecting in 4 rings. Copper, grass flower, silver-etched, and bluebell braid gems of promise, forged through whispers and moon. Morning waited beyond eastern ridge with pale promise of dawn. In hearts wound close by vow and choice, love stood unbroken, ready to face the final fracture and knit it whole again. Kaelin woke to the sound of dripping water and the faint creak of frost splitting bark. Dawn's first thin light had not yet pushed past the mist, but he felt the valley stirring, restless, expectant. He rolled from his bedroll, careful not to jostle Aiden, who slept curled against a warm rock with the sapphire glass lantern in his arms. The boy's breath puffed small clouds that drifted straight upward before fading. The flame inside the lantern throbbed white, brighter than anything else in the gray gloom. Kalen's wolf paced the camp perimeter, inhaling air that smelled of damp earth and a far-off hint of wild lavender. When it spotted Kalen, it sent a thought like a low hum. Trees moved again. He nodded and rose, slinging a spear. Every morning since they'd entered Silver Mist, trunks had shifted a finger's width closer, roots curling like curious fingers. So far, the movement was slow, more unsettling than dangerous, but it kept everyone alert. He crossed to the fire pit where Darius had coaxed a flame from last night's embers. Sparks ticked skyward. Lysara sat on a stump nearby, rubbing her abdomen through layered wool. Darius glanced up. Up early. Kalen shrugged. Couldn't sleep? He sank to a knee, feeding dry twigs into the blaze. When Isara's eyes met his, they shone with something softer than dawn, pure anticipation wrapped in worry. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Darius covered her hand with his. Tell him, he urged gently. Isara inhaled, cheeks pink from fire heat and secret joy. There will be new life, she said. Darius felt it first. Her palm pressed lightly to her belly. Kalen's eyebrows shot up. He let out a breath between teeth. Hope travels fast. He managed a smile. Congratulations. She squeezed his forearm. We need reasons to believe in tomorrow. The words landed like a stone half hidden in moss. Weighty, grounding. A low rumble echoed through the valley. Neither thunder nor moving rock, but something deeper, like a giant, exhaling under the soil. Darius and Kalen exchanged wary glances. Kalen's wolf replied with a single word. Warning. The rumble faded, leaving air oddly still. Kalen rose, scanning fog. I'll check the north curve. He jogged off, spear ready, wolf falling in beside him. In their tent, Lyana stirred at the same tremor. The brief vibration rattled wooden tent poles. She blinked up at canvas glowing pale orange from the hearthpot's embers. Lucian slept beside her, arm draped across her waist. Copper ring nestled against her collarbone. Kalis lay at their feet, eyes already open, ears tilted forward. The wolf shared a silent message. Earth moves, but heart is steady. Lyana brushed a hand over Lucian's arm. He woke quickly, soldier's reflex, then relaxed when he met her gaze. Another grumble? He asked. Felt like it. She shifted onto her side, tracing the scar near his lower ribs, product of a battle months back. Did you dream? He shook his head, lashes still heavy with sleep. Only of you sleeping. She smiled, cheeks warming. Pretend you're not always watching. His hand pressed in at her back. Watching is breathing. Their wolves exchanged a soft snuffle before slipping outside the tent flap. Lucian kissed the tip of her nose, then her lips. Slow, morning sweet. They lingered until a distant whistle cut through camp. Kalen's signal. Lucian pulled back, eyes sharpening. Perimeter, I'll go. Lyana began to rise. His palm on her thigh stopped her. I'll be fast. Stay and breathe. She grasped his wrist. I breathe better beside you. He grinned, the rare dimple deepening. I'll return in 2 breaths. He grabbed his cloak, ducked out, and vanished into mist. Lyana sat cross-legged, inhaling steam from the hearth pot where dried mint steeped. She listened, soft breeze through tent canvas, the distant hush of the spring. Birdsong muffled as if bird throats feared to break the valley's hush. Her mind drifted to the spring, to the warmth of Lucian's body against hers, to vows and the face of Varric, darkening the water hours later. Doubt pricked. She shoved it aside with a practiced effort. She recalled Elder Seria's warning. Light will fracture. Only freely chosen love can mend it. She pressed fingers to her copper ring and whispered, "My choice." Across camp, Liora sat on a flat stone near the fire pit, staring at the gentle swirl of smoke rising in ribbons. She twirled the fresh grass and flower ring on her finger, petals still dewy. Lyrian watched from a few paces away, leaning against a mossy boulder, arms folded, letting her settle. Finally she spoke. "I thought I could handle illusion after all we've seen. Last night proved I'm still weak." Lyrian straightened, stepping close. Weak is the wrong word. He squatted, bringing his gaze level with hers. "Illusion attacks where we guard least. That's not weakness, Liora. It's evidence you still have tender parts worth protecting." She looked down. "Tender is just breakable." "Tender," he said, tipping her chin, "is where feeling lives. And I'd rather break with feeling than live unbroken and empty." His wolf licked Astriel's ear, huffing agreement. Liora drew a shaky breath. "Tell me one small thing you love about me." His smile flickered. "When you braid your hair, you hum without realizing. It sounds like sunrise." She flushed. "One small thing?" she asked. He tapped her nose. "Your freckles, all 9 of them." She laughed. "You counted." "I count what matters." She cupped his cheek, leaning in for a soft kiss that tasted of wood smoke and promise. Astriel and his wolf circled, tails wagging gently. Raven emerged from her own tent, adjusting her cloak. Lucian, the Lichen King, joined her, both heading toward the center where Thalos and the shaman examined a lichen-streaked standing stone. Faint gold lines pulsed across its surface. "Rune shift again?" Raven asked. The shaman nodded, touching fingers to the glow. Love's resonance spreads, but something tugs from the east, dragging threads taut. Kalen jogged back, spear-trailing, wolf at his side. "North curve stable," he reported. Trees moved 2 paces again, but no hostile presence. Thalos contemplated. Silver mist reacts like a mirror to hearts. Movement might echo our own shifting fears. Kalen shrugged. "Fear or not, a tree creeping at camp's edge unnerves guards." Raven addressed the group. "We set additional wards. Light and laughter," she said, gaze landing on Kieran and Ella, "are part of those wards." The minstrel placed a hand over his heart. "Melody will hold the line." By midday, the mist thinned enough that ethereal shapes of ruins emerged clear. Kieran and Ella ventured with Aiden toward a half-standing arch carved with vines. Glyphs etched into stone caught stray sunbeams shimmering faint green. Aiden pointed. "Letters." Ella brushed moss away. "Song lyrics," she mused. Kieran sang the first 4 notes aloud, voice low but clear. Stone answered, glyphs igniting luminous blue. Far across camp, the spring glowed in resonance. Lyana felt warmth ripple up through her boots. Kalen raised brows. "You sing Rocks Light Up?" Kieran tipped an imaginary hat. "I'm full of surprises." Ella's cheeks reddened. Aiden's grin spread ear to ear. Late afternoon drifted toward auburn dusk. Lucian rejoined Lyana, sliding an arm around her shoulders as they walked the perimeter with Kalis. "Trees eased," he said. "Maybe they've settled." She nodded, yet unease fluttered under her ribs. The question rose. If light fractures like Saria said, what if breaking looks like losing you? He stopped, turning her gently to face him. "Look at me." She met his gaze. "The only way you lose me is if you stop choosing me. And I know your stubbornness." She laughed, tension easing. "Stubborn as moons." He kissed her brow. Kailis yipped, content. Evening brought supper of trout cooked with herb butter over open flame. Kieran played the newly found song again. Ruins glowed faint with each refrain. Wolves sprawled near companions, soaking heat from stones. Darius announced quietly to Raven and Isara the news of the pregnancy. Raven embraced them both. "New life in times of shadow is the sharpest blade against despair," she said. Tears glistened in Isara's eyes. Full night settled. Fireflies drifted thicker, swirling like living constellations over the spring. The valley air cooled to a gentle bite. Tents stood like low-hum hearths beneath great trees. Lucian and Lyana slipped away, walking hand in hand toward a ring of bent elms that formed a natural arch. Liora and Lyrian followed parallel path, torches left behind to give night its soft mystery. Within the ring, heartbeats spoke louder than words. Lucian drew Lyana close. Their wolves lay at their feet, guardians and witnesses. Breath mingled, warmth beloved. He whispered fears of prophecy, turning him into blade rather than man. She answered by lifting his hand to her pulse. Feel this. Your flesh, not fate. Mist eddied around them, curling like curious silk. Fireflies rose, glinting gold between lips that met in slow, sure kiss. Elsewhere, Lyrian led Liora to a shallow hollow where grass glowed faint blue. Moonlight brushed her cheeks. He knelt, a gesture of reverence, not subservience, and pressed a kiss to her palm. She knelt too, bringing her forehead to his. Promise me your name will never fade, she murmured. He smiled. Your breath writes it on the wind each time you laugh. Tears shimmered. He kissed them away. Their wolves lay head to head, sharing quiet huffs. As love blossomed beneath ancient boughs, Kaelin patrolled alone along eastern boundary. Mist thickened once more, curling in tendrils. He halted when a shadow stepped from treeline, tall, cloaked, no face visible. His wolf bristled but didn't lunge. Kaelin's spear rose. Identify. The figure said nothing, only lifted a hand where a black feather dripped darkness like ink. Kaelin's heart hammered. He heard faint whisper, doubt, like wind inside skull. He gritted teeth, stepped forward. Speak or leave. The shadow retreated, melting into mist. Wolf lunged after, finding only chill air. Kaelin exhaled shakily, retrieving feather fallen in moss. It dissolved into dust at touch. He hurried back, reporting to Thalos and Raven. The elder frowned but said, Illusion, seeking cracks. Raven ordered double sentries. After midnight, calm returned, but tension coiled just beneath. In a shared dream, Elder Seria's figure glided into Lyana and Liora's thoughts. They stood in a field of floating petals, sky shifting through dawn and dusk at once. The seer's blindfold fluttered as if windless breeze. Her voice came from everywhere. Light will fracture. Only love freely remade can mend it. With that, she dissipated like mist under sun. The twins jolted awake in their respective tents. Outside, every wolf barked once, a chorus cutting through the hush. Spring glowed bright turquoise for a breath, then dimmed. Mist churned, then calmed. Inside tents, hearts drummed but steadied as they reached for their mates beside them. Lyana whispered, Love remakes. Lucian's grip tightened. Then we remake as many times as needed. Liora murmured to Lyrian, We hold every shard. He kissed her wrist. Until they gleam stronger. Dawn finally bled pale coral beyond treetops. Silver mist stirred under first birdsong. Companions stepped from tents into breath-cold air smelling of damp pine and coming dawn. Kieran tuned his lute, plucked chord that reverberated through ruins, causing spring to flicker soft gold. Aiden raised the lantern. Flame shone bright white. Darius slung bow, Isara adjusted cloak. Raven addressed the group, voice carrying steady strength. Varric presses illusions. He may come in flesh next. We march at midday beyond valley to Broken Moon Pass. Guard hearts, guard each other. Everyone nodded. Wolves shook fur, exhaled white plumes. Lyana and Lucian shared one last quiet walk along Spring Bank. She dipped fingers. Water cool. He set palm over hers. He can't turn choice into doubt. She answered by drawing him into a kiss that tasted of sunrise and resolve. Their wolves watched, ears relaxed. Liora and Lyrian stood where blue grass glowed, He tucked a new bloom behind her ear. Memory anchored. She smiled. Future chosen. Astriel pressed against their legs, tail sweeping dew. When camp broke, mist parted as if bowing. Path east opened, lined by trees no longer shifting but standing sentinel. The company marched, hearts humming with memories of touch and whispered vows. The spring behind them pulsed once, sending ripples across water like lingering heartbeat. High above, clouds formed bruised shapes, edges lit by dawn. Varric's presence weighed on horizon, but within 4 bonded hearts, love shone quiet and fierce. Light not broken, only tempered for battles ahead. Mist thinned as the company left Silver Mist Valley, but its memory clung to every cloak and thought. The path east ran along a low ridge bordered by wind-gnarled pines whose needles rattled like dry rain when the breeze cut through. Lucian and Lyana led, wolves flanking shoulder to knee. Behind them, Liora and Lyrian walked close enough that their arms brushed at each step. Aiden marched beside Kaelin, lantern held high even in daylight. Kieran hummed under his breath, shaping unspoken nerves into melody. Darius and Isara watched the rear, eyes sweeping every dip in snow. Above, clouds gathered heavy and violet, the sun no more than a blurred disk. Around mid-morning they passed a series of half-buried stones etched with twin spirals. The shaman paused to press a palm to one, whispering a short prayer. Thalos touched another and frowned. Lines tug stronger here. Raven lifted her gaze. Broken moon passes less than a day. Lucian the Lycan King studied the sky. Storm brews fast. We reach shelter by dusk or pitch tents under lightning. Kaelin's wolf huffed. Shelter, it insisted. Kaelin relayed, earning nods all around it. They pressed on. The ridge narrowed, dropping steep on the right into a ravine choked with black pines. Wind funneled upward in cold bursts, carrying the scent of iron and distant smoke. Liora inhaled sharply. Something's burning. Lyrian set a reassuring hand on her back. Likely outpost fires. Yet his wolf whispered, or worse. He kept that silent. Shortly before noon, Kaelin signaled halt at a rocky spur. Ahead, the trail bent into a thin neck of land pinched between cliff and ravine. Snow there lay pristine, save for a single set of boot prints leading toward them, no returning tracks. Kaelin crouched, gloved fingers brushing edges. Hours old, weight of one man, large build. Darius stepped forward, arrow knocked. He may wait ahead. Liana's wolf growled low. Unknown scent. Lucian gestured for caution and advanced alone until the neck widened to a flat shelf of stone. No one waited. Only a feather lay at the center. Black, edges dripping what looked like fresh ink that never quite touched the ground. Lucian knelt, examining. The feather dissolved before his eyes, curling into a wisp that drifted toward the ravine and vanished. He felt pressure behind ribs, like a held breath too long. His wolf growled inside. Bait. He rose. Varric's sign only, he called back. Keep moving. They continued, tension wrapping every shoulder. Liora clenched Lyrian's hand until knuckles whitened. He murmured calm, brushing his thumb over her pulse. Wolves padded close, no longer roaming. Afternoon light flickered as clouds thickened. Snow began as sparse flakes, swirling sideways. Kayla snorted when flakes landed on Liana's lips. She laughed softly and let one melt on her tongue. Tastes like first winter back home, she said. Lucian smiled, though worry dulled its edge. They crested a rise where the valley floor opened into a bowl of wind-swept grass. In the center stood an ancient stone arch, half collapsed, its twin pillars leaning like weary sentries. Raven called a short rest, stating the arch provided narrow shelter from wind. Tents would wait until evening. For now, warmth came from shared cloaks and hot broth. Fire pits were dug into shallow snowbanks. Kieran worked flint while Ella fed dried pine needles. Flame caught, flickering orange. Lyana helped Liora fill a small pot with snow, setting it to melt. "You look lighter today," she observed, brushing stray grass from her sister's hair. Liora's smile was faint but steady. Lyrian found the right words. Around the fire, their wolves curled together, forming a tight circle of fur that warmed boot toes. Aiden crouched nearby, the lantern bright as star against gray afternoon. Steam rose as broth simmered. Kaelin patrolled the perimeter, passing between ruin shadows. Snow thickened, swirling until visibility shortened. He paused at the base of a giant pine, eyes narrowing at faint shapes between branches. Figures of mist, almost human, dissolving when stared at directly. His wolf's ears flattened. Illusion. He turned back toward camp, but halfway a low whisper skimmed his ear. Too late. He spun, spear ready, yet saw nothing but snow. He exhaled slow, counting heartbeats until pounding eased. Back at the arch, Lucian offered Lyana the first cup of hot broth, adding a spoonful of wild honey from Raven's pack. She sipped, savoring warmth down her throat. "If prophecy needs sacrifice," she murmured, "I would trade anything but you." Lucian set his cup aside, cupped her face. "Then we trade nothing and fight harder." His wolf nudged Kalis, and both wolves huffed approval, mixing breath clouds in cold air. Across the fire, Liora rested her head on Lyrian's shoulder, overcome by exhaustion and lingering dread. He stroked her brow with gloved fingers. "Rest a moment." Astriel lay pressed against her side, heartbeat echoing. Lyrian's wolf lay opposite, forming a living barrier between them and wind. Darius tossed an extra cloak over them. Liora murmured thanks before drifting into half-sleep. Kaelin returned, reporting the phantom figures. Thalos frowned. Veil thins further. Illusions grow bold near Broken Moon Pass. The shaman asked Kairos, the name of Kaelin's wolf, for detail. The wolf projected an image. Mist, men hollow, as echo, shapes flickering like dying sparks. Thalos traced sigils in the air, leaving faint green trails that vanished. Harmless unless believed real, he concluded. By late afternoon, snow let up, replaced by fine ice crystals that floated rather than fell. Sun dipped behind thick cloud. Gray deepened to bruised violet. Raven consulted sky, deciding they could press 2 more hours to reach the mouth of Broken Moon Pass before full dark. Campfire embers were quenched, packs repacked, thoughts of rest replaced by urgency. Wolves shook snow from coats, alert but calm. As they prepared to move, Darius noticed the standing stones of the arch glowing pale turquoise again. He called Kieran, who quietly hummed last night's melody. Glyphs brightened at the first note, then dimmed. When Kieran stopped, a soft tone lingered in air, a resonance rather than sound. Lyana felt it thrumming through her chest. Leora's ring warmed. Thalos tilted his head. "Stone answers song that rings with love," he said. Raven gestured forward. "Let that answer walk with us." March resumed. Snowfields alternated with clusters of frost-nipped shrubs that seemed to bow as the company passed. The terrain climbed in gentle steps, each higher than the last, until ridge walls compressed like closing jaws. Broken Moon Pass loomed, 2 cliff faces plunging upward into storm clouds, their peaks hidden. A natural arch of ice-black rock spanned the gap 3 bow shots ahead, marking entrance to narrow gorge. Wind funneled through, shrieking. Lucian's wolf braced, claws scraping frozen earth. Kalis lowered head, ears pinned. Everyone pulled hoods tight. Flakes stung skin like sparks, yet within the gale, voices seemed to murmur. Lyana caught fragments. Surrender, shatter, break. She tightened grip on Lucian's hand. "They lie," he said, voice steady. "Hold." They reached the arch at twilight. Snow piled against cliff sides, but ground beneath arch lay bare stone, smooth and black, veins of quartz glinting. Thalos signaled stop. "Beyond this arch the pass narrows. If Varric strikes, it will be there." Kaelin planted spear shaft. Formations? Lucian the Lycan King directed with brisk motions. Kaelin and Darius front, wolves flanking. Aiden centered with lantern. Elders and mystics mid, twins and mates directly behind vanguard. Ravens burned in each chest, but calm sat in eyes. Before they stepped through, Kieran strummed his lute, soft but piercing. The melody wove threads from silver mist song, love's vow and morning hope. Snow swirling around arch glowed faint sapphire, then fell hushed at his last chord. Ella clasped his arm, pride shining. Lucian squeezed Lyana's hand once, then released as they adopted formation. Liora touched Lyrian's wrist, silent message passing. Estriel brushed shoulders with Kaelis. Both wolves faced wind, tails high. The company stepped beneath arch. A ripple chased up Blackstone, casting reflections like water ripples in moonlight. On the far side, gorge walls pressed close, tall enough to swallow sky. Wind died to a low moan. A hush swallowed footfalls. Each breath steamed white and slow. Shadows pooled at cliff base, deeper than night. Darius's arrow knocked, flight feathers shivering. Halfway through gorge, the ground shivered, subtle like a distant drum. Kaelis growled. Astriel answered. Lyana's copper ring burned hot against skin. Ahead, Kaelin halted. Movement. In gloom, forms emerged. Dozens of figures woven from mist, yet denser than earlier illusions. Dark shapes with wolfish outlines, eyes ember red, fangs glinting. They barred path, silent. Lucian drew his sword. Lyana unsheathed ancestor dagger. Sparks of runes lit blade edges. Lyrian stepped forward, spear catching faint light. Liora raised palms, breath steady but eyes bright. Their wolves bristled, low growls harmonizing. A single figure stepped ahead of Phantom Pack, taller, cloaked, face hidden. Its voice slithered through air, not quite heard, more felt beneath skin. I need no steel to cut where doubt already lives. Light fractures. Choose fear. The cloak lifted, revealing not flesh but swirling smoke coalescing into Varric's gaunt face. Eyes void of star glint. Lucian's wolf snarled. Kaelis barked once, deep, vibrating gorge walls. Lyana stepped forward, dagger up, heart pounding but sure. Love stands. Her voice rang, echoing against stone. Phantoms flinched. Lucian joined her. Choice binds. Their rings flared bright, copper and silver dancing sparks across dark. Liora and Lyrian clasped hands, stepping beside them. Memory anchors, Liora said. Their rings glowed green and blue, light weaving a web across gorge floor. Wolves howled as one, sound rolling outward. Varric's shadow recoiled, edges fraying. Doubt his blade. Break. Lyana lifted dagger, placing tip to heart. Then watch blade fail. She closed eyes, remembering spring, kiss, promise. Lucian touched hilt. Runes blazed white, shooting threads of brilliance that lanced through shadow forms. They burst into ash, swirling before wind carried them upward. Varric's image cracked, fissures of light splitting his outline. His voice hissed once more, choice costs, and he shattered into smoky shards swirling skyward. Silence dropped heavy. Wind returned, sighing between cliffs. Snow drifted gently again. The twins stood breathing hard, hands still clasped. Wolves relaxed, tails lowering. Kaelin exhaled a laugh, half disbelief, half relief. Darius lowered bow. Aiden's lantern burned bright gold. Thalos stepped forward, staff alight. Illusion strong but broken. The shaman examined ground where shadow stood. Only a ring of frost remained. Raven approached twins, pride shining. Love did this, she whispered. Lucian the Lycan King placed a firm hand on Lucian's shoulder, nodding without words. Snow ceased. A crack in cloud revealed a sliver of moon, bathing gorge in pale silver. Light touched 4 rings, making them blaze. Wolves lifted muzzles, howling triumph, that echoed until cliffs sang back. Night's edge deepened, but hearts glowed. They'd passed first test within the gorge. Yet in the hush, each felt prophecy tighten. Final trial ahead, cost unknown. Lyana leaned into Lucian, forehead to his. "Still unbroken?" He answered, "Unbreakable." Liora pressed her cheek to Lyrian's. "Memory strong?" He replied, "Future stronger." Wolves circled, pressing fur to knees, anchors of warmth. The company moved again, leaving Frostring behind. At gorge exit, a plateau opened, leading toward distant fire-lit specks, ally campfires at Broken Moon Pass. Path ahead wound between snowy ridges, but stars scattered above, bright and encouraging. Breath misted, yet no fear pressed. As they walked, Kieran strummed quietly, melody matching new heartbeat of group. Kaelin joked with Aiden about mist wolves running from real ones. Isara squeezed Darius's hand, hope of child warming with each step. Behind them, Silver Mist Valley faded into night, its spring still glowing faint where love had woven truth. Ahead, the storm waited, but within hearts a light burned, made brighter by fracture resisted and vows freely spoken. Dawn seeped into Silver Mist Valley as a pale wash of pearl, hardly brighter than the night before it. Frost-coated ferns breathed in the hush, their fronds sagging under beads that caught the faint light and flashed like tiny memories of stars. The sacred spring, usually a living pool of blue fire, lay still and shadowed, as though it held its breath alongside the land. A single raven called once from a distant pine, and then was quiet. Lyana woke first. She lay beneath a fur blanket, Lucian's chest rising and falling against her back, his arm draped over her waist. Kylus kept watch at the tent's open flap, head low, ears swiveling at every distant rustle. The wolf's thought brushed her mind. This is the hour before the breaking. She nodded without speaking, letting the words settle. Careful not to wake Lucian, she slid from beneath his arm, pressed a kiss to his shoulder, and stepped into the cold. Mist lapped at her boots like chill smoke. Liora emerged from the next tent in the same moment, cloak pulled tight, Astriel at her heels. The sisters met at the spring's edge where brittle reeds bowed under frost. They linked hands in silence. Astriel's golden eyes met Kaelus's across misty water. Both wolves dipped their heads, sharing a single thought. Hold. Lucian and Lyrian joined seconds later, drawn by the empty space at their sides and the same gnawing tension under their ribs. Lucian's fingers found Lyana's. Lyrian's arm slid around Liora's shoulders. Words felt too loud, so they watched the water together, 4 reflections wavering on its dull glass. A trickle of warmth passed from ring to ring, pulse to pulse. Not far away, Kaelin paced the perimeter, spear cutting a slender arc each time he turned. Aiden trotted behind, lantern in hand despite the growing light. Kieran knelt by the dying cook fire, coaxing sparks to life while humming a tune so soft the flames barely dared to listen. Ella spread new bedding near a low stone, arranging furs with ritual precision. Darius and Isara inspected arrow shafts. The tasks were familiar, but the silence between heartbeats felt stretched thin. Raven appeared from the mist, followed by Lucian the Lichen King. Their breaths rose in small plumes. They stopped beside Thalos and the shaman, who stood before Elder Saria. The seer's blindfold fluttered in a wind no one else felt. She raised her chin, the fabric shimmering with dew. "Where twin bonds rise," she said, voice carrying without force, "one must fall, unless love remakes the path." The shaman added, "Not a spell, but a soul choice, one freely given." Her gaze moved to the twin pairs. Lyana steadied her breathing. Lucian laced his fingers tighter through hers. Liora felt Lyrian's heartbeat under his cloak sleeve. Fast, but sure. Elder Saria turned toward the spring. The water rippled once, though no breeze touched it. A hush tumbled across camp, so complete that even the wolves froze. Varric emerged from the mist as if stepping through a thin curtain. Alone, unarmed, yet the air warped around him, making the world lean. He wore no armor, no cloak, only darkness that clung to long limbs and gathered like smoke in his hollow eyes. Kalis growled, fur lifting along his spine. Astriel bared her teeth, silent but fierce. The other wolves formed a broken circle around their humans. Kalen's spear lowered to aim, but Raven's hand rose. Hold. Varric's lips curved into a smile too slow, as if he tasted sour sweetness. Such tender light, he said, voice soft as falling ash. Lucian stepped forward, but Lyana caught his wrist. The villain's gaze shifted from Lucian to the copper ring glimmering on Lyana's chest. "Does it burn yet?" he asked gently. "Or do you still believe love cannot fracture?" He lifted a hand. Mist swirled into shapes. Lyana in Raven's arms, newborn, eyes closed. The image shifted. Liora standing alone in an empty hall, echo bouncing off stone. Another flicker and Lucian bled out on a battlefield of ice while Lyrian cradled Liora's body in snow. Lyana's breath hitched, but she did not look away. Lucian's wolf spoke inside him. Illusion. He spoke the word aloud. Liora shut her eyes, but Varric's whisper slid past her lids, painting a world where Lyrian never saw her, where her laughter went unheard. Tears pricked, yet Lyrian pressed his forehead to hers, voice low. "Truth, Liora. Find it." Her ring throbbed against his palm. Varric chuckled. "Love is pliable, stretch it far enough." Kalis lunged, a warning snap that made Varric still. The wolf's mind voice cut across every bond. Anchor, now. Lucian moved, putting his back to Lyana's, sword unsheathed. He felt her breath steady. Together they stepped sideways, forming a living cross with Liora and Lyrian. Wolves tightened the circle. Snow underfoot darkened where Varric walked, each step leaching color. He lifted both arms. "One of you for the rest, a fair bargain. Choose wisely." The valley trembled. The spring's surface blackened. Mist thickened into walls. Kalen and Darius raised weapons but kept distance. This battle was not theirs to fight. Lucian's jaw set. "We choose no one," he said. Varric tilted his head. "Then all fall." Light cracked overhead like silent lightning. Varric thrust a hand toward Lyana. Illusion roared. Lucian dead at her feet, Kalis fading. Another thrust at Lyrian, Liora fading to dust in his arms. The images tried to press into minds like shards of glass, yet each pair tightened their grasp. Lyana's voice broke through, strong despite tears. "I choose him, in every breath." Lucian's sword flared silver gold. "And I her, beyond death." Liora whispered, "I choose truth." Lyrian's ring blazed. "I choose now." The spring erupted, blue fire surging high and then crashing down in a wave that swept Varric off balance. The wolves howled, a roar of heartbeats in sound. Fire met mist, smashing illusions into sparks. Varric staggered, face twisting. "Choice is illusion." Lyana stepped forward, dagger drawn. Lucian covered her flank. Liora and Lyrian mirrored on the opposite side, rings casting streaks of color across snow. The four lifted blades and bare hands into light. Varric threw darkness like nets, but each net struck ring light and unraveled. Snowstorm whirled into a cyclone of brightness. Varric screamed, echo or fury, no one knew, and his form crumbled. Grains of ash pulled upward into dawn wind. Mist cleared, draining color back to trees, spring, sky. Silence shattered with the thud of Lucian dropping to one knee, blood staining his cloak where Varric's last shadow blade found flesh. Lyana caught him, lowering him to snow. Kalis pressed muzzle to his cheek, transferring warmth. Tears streamed, falling onto wound. "Stay," she whispered. Not command, but plea. Lucian smiled weakly. "Never leaving." The copper ring brightened, sewing threads of light across injury. Kalis's gold eyes glowed, force of bond pouring through flesh and cloth. Wound closed, pain receding like tide. Not far away, Liora slumped, weary. Lyrian lifted her onto his lap beside the spring. She traced a fingertip on his cheek. "We're here." He nodded, leaning into her palm. Estriel curled around them, heartbeat sinking. Companions approached slowly. Kaelin's spear dipped in salute. Aiden's lantern shone brighter than day. Kieran and Ella clutched each other, tears shining. Darius exhaled a shaky breath, drawing Isara close. Thalos and the shaman knelt by spring. The water glowed soft green now, no longer blue fire, but living. Elder Seria's voice floated, a whisper carried on valley wind. "Love, chosen without fear, is the most powerful bond in the realm." Raven knelt at her daughter's sides, brushing hair from their eyes. Lucian, the lichen king, bowed his head to his son. "Legacy remade," he said. Snow melted around the spring, revealing grass greener than any winter should allow. Wolves lay beside their humans, finally at peace. Night fell gentle. Stars blinked awake one by one. The valley breathed easy. Around the spring, torches burned, but were unnecessary. Rings on 4 hands glowed softly, painting their skin gold, silver, emerald, and blue. Liana lay with her head on Lucian's chest, listening to his heart. "This is not the end of our story," she said. He stroked her hair, smiling at the sky. "It's the beginning of the legacy we chose." Nearby, Liora rested against Lyrian, her cheek over his heartbeat. He whispered, "Tomorrow waits, but tonight is ours." She kissed the place beneath his jaw, where pulse beat strong. "We meet tomorrow together." Wolves stretched, tails sweeping. Kaelis rested his head over Liana's ankle. Astriel snuggled against Leora's side. Lucian's wolf lay across his knees. Lyrian's wolf pressed into his back. Together they looked up, ears relaxed. Companions formed a loose ring, seated on blankets or stones, silent or humming. Kieran plucked quiet chords on his lute. No song of victory, only gentle notes of dawn. The spring reflected the rings bright as small suns. Mist never returned. The valley whispered. Love became legend. And the 4 who'd made that whisper live closed their eyes, breathed in unison, and finally rested, knowing dawn would rise on a world rewritten by choice. The moon rose into a sky scrubbed clean of storm and shadow, its light silvering every pine needle and the restless surface of the spring. Hours had slipped away since Varric's echo broke apart in the dawn blast, yet no one in the valley felt the passage of time as they once had. A hush lingered, soft, expectant, unsteady in the way newborn peace often is. Lucian sat propped against a cushioned mound of cloaks near the spring, cloak draped over his shoulders. Liana nestled at his side, cheek pressed against his collarbone, feeling the steady rise and fall she had feared might vanish forever. Kaelis dozed at their feet, one ear angled toward the rustle of every branch. Each time Liana's breath hitched, the wolf nudged her calf in calm assurance. Across the clearing, Liora and Lyrian sat close enough for their knees to touch. They spoke in low tones, trading fragments of memory and hope, while Astriel circled behind them, brushing her flank against their backs like a silent promise. Leora's voice trembled only when she recounted the illusion Varric had tried to give her, empty halls, her laughter echoing alone. But the tremor steadied when Lyrian pressed 2 fingertips beneath her chin, lifting her gaze to his. "I saw it too," he admitted, voice rough like gravel smoothed by rain. "A world without you is a sky with no moon. Even if 1,000 suns rise, they don't matter." She laid her palm over the grassflower ring at his finger. "Then let's never let a dawn pass without reminding each other of that truth." Their wolves shared a low, contented rumble, 2 heartbeats in different pelts. A short distance away, Kaelin briefly abandoned his patrol to kneel at the spring's edge. He dipped a water skin, watching the surface glow warm where it touched. Aiden stood beside him, lantern shuttered but still bright inside. "Does it feel different?" Kaelin asked. Aiden tipped his head. Lighter, he answered, like it sees us now. The boy's eyes remained fixed on Lyana and Lucian, then on Liora and Lyrian, shining with an awe too large for his small frame. Behind them, Kieran strummed a gentle progression that drifted up into the night. Ella hummed harmony, her voice a soft braid to his melody. The notes slipped between pine trunks, gliding outward, until even the shivering branches stilled to listen. Raven watched it all from a low boulder, cloak tucked tight around her. Lucian the Lichen King stood beside her, hands clasped behind his back. His eyes traced every flicker of ring light, every grin between the twins and the slow relaxation in their wolves' shoulders. They did what we could not, he murmured. They chose with wholly unbound hearts, Raven replied. Perhaps our generation did too much choosing out of necessity. And yet, he said, a hint of wonder softening the gravel in his tone, here we stand to see the fruit of it. Raven slipped her hand into his. They had been sovereigns and soldiers longer than they'd been friends or lovers, yet at that moment, neither role felt more important than being witnesses. Thalos approached, staff glowing faint around the carved runes. The shaman paced at his side, scattering cedar needles into the air. Elder Saria followed, guided by the valley's pulse rather than by touch. She stopped before the spring. Love rewrote the line, she said, though no question had been asked. Her blindfold fluttered in the breeze. But a line written in hearts must still be spoken, or its ink may fade. Lyana lifted her head from Lucian's chest. What words remain? Thalos planted his staff in the soil, and sparks of pale gold leapt from its base. The vow began at Stone Hearth, deepened at Broken Moon, and withstood Silver Mist. Now it needs only to be given voice without fear, a vow of living, not of dying. Lucian looked to Lyana and she to him. No reluctance lingered. Only a shy awareness that words could feel small against what pulsed in their ribs. Still, she stood, tugging him gently upright. Liora and Lyrian joined them. Wolves formed a semicircle, tails wagging slow. Companions rose from logs and rocks, drawing close enough to hear but careful to remain outside the invisible boundary love had drawn. Lyana's voice carried without force. Prophecy told me one day I would rise, or I would break. I believed it, until today. Now I know I will rise and break and mend 1,000 times, but always beside you. Her fingers curled around Lucian's. My choice is to rebuild with you again and again. Lucian let out a slow, unshaking breath. I once feared fate would claim my life before I ever learned to live. Then you placed fire inside my chest, and I understood living is every heartbeat that knows its own reason. My reason is you. Ring light flared between their palms, copper stitched with soft silver. Liora stepped forward. Her lashes trembled, but her voice did not. I feared becoming invisible. Tonight I learned light does not wait to be seen. It burns, even in shadows. You saw me, Lyrian, before I saw myself. And now I see us. Lyrian answered, quiet but firm. I spent years armoring against storms. You are the still eye that taught me to stand in rain. I choose to walk unshielded if your hand is in mine. Their rings brightened, emerald and blue twining to a single glow. Kalis threw back his head, releasing a howl that began low and rose into aching beauty. Astriel joined, then Lucian's wolf, then Lyrian's. The sound rolled outward, echoing off every hill, until even the trees seemed to hum with it. When silence fell again, Silver Mist Valley felt wider, taller, reborn. The spring answered next. A column of light rose, but unlike the brutal blue that had annihilated Varric, this glow was warm gold shot with gentle green strands. It settled on the four mates and their wolves, washing weary faces clean of ash and grit, knitting small cuts, easing bruised muscles. Lucian's half-healed wound sealed smooth. Only a faint line remained to mark the cost. Elder Saria lifted her head, tears seeping beneath the cloth. Love became legend, she whispered. A breath later, snowflakes began to drift, soft, glimmering, harmless. They landed on cloaks, on outstretched palms, on wolves' noses, but melted in a blink. Liora laughed, a light sound even she did not expect. Lyrian caught a flake on the tip of his glove and touched it to her cheek before it vanished. Companions stepped nearer. Aiden reached Liana's side, holding his lantern aloft, so its glow mingled with ring light. "Does the spring stay awake now?" he asked. "Forever," Liana answered, smiling down. Kaelin clapped a hand on Lucian's shoulder. "Not bad for a dawn's work." Lucian chuckled, exhaustion easing under fresh warmth. "We've learned from veterans." Darius wrapped an arm around Isara's waist, drawing her closer. She whispered something in his ear and gestured toward her belly. Liana watched the quiet joy bloom in their faces. "New life is already answering," she said softly to Lucian. Raven and the Lycan King stepped forward then, no longer rulers, but simply parents. Raven gathered her daughters against her, tears tracking down a face more accustomed to command than to raw display. The king embraced his son, then drew Liana in as if she had always belonged. Thalos raised his staff once more. Runes glimmered, then faded. "The prophecy's last echo is gone," he declared. "What remains is choice." Kieran's lute issued a hopeful chord. He caught Ella's hand, and they began a song with a melody that felt like home after endless nights away. Fire crackled back to life. Kaelin unpacked bread and cheese. Even wolves stepped back from guard stances, circling into sleep-ready lumps near companions' feet. Night deepened, blanketing the valley in calm. Stars were so clear they seemed within reach. Lyana and Lucian slipped away toward the stand of bent cedars, where they first spoke of choosing tomorrow. They sat shoulder to shoulder, backs against a trunk Kayla sprawled across their boots. "I expected fanfare," Lucian said, voice low. "But quiet feels right." "It does," Lyana agreed. "We didn't need the world to watch us win, only to see us live." She tilted her head toward him, stole a soft kiss. He whispered, "You ready for ordinary days?" She brushed her thumb across the faint line where wound had been. "Ordinary with you is extraordinary enough." A few paces away, under a willow drooping silver catkins, Liora traced crescent shapes in damp earth while Lyrian leaned beside her. Astriel circled twice, then lay down, her head on Lyrian's knee. "Are you frightened the silence will feel empty?" she asked. He shook his head. "Silence with you is full." He watched her draw loops. "What is that?" "New path," she replied. "A winding road without a map." She smiled. "Best kind." He leaned, kissed her temple, breathed in sweet pine and spring water scent that lingered in her hair. "Then let's get lost together." Their wolves rumbled content, pressing closer. The remainder of camp settled into gentle noise, quiet laughter, flicking fire. The hush of dressings changed and cloaks shaken. Kaelin bet Aiden he could identify constellations faster. Aiden won when the lantern's glow pointed out 3 new star patterns. Ella inked the song lyrics onto fresh parchment by torchlight while Kieran helped. Darius sharpened a blade, humming harmony. Isara dozed against his shoulder. At last torch flames dwindled to embers. One by one, companions curled onto furs. Wolves stretched and yawned wide, tongues lolling. The king and Raven retired to a tent not far from their daughters, but left flaps untied so the night air carried every contented sigh. Lyana and Lucian eventually rose, fingers intertwined, and crossed back to the spring. Liora and Lyrian followed. The water glowed softly still, reflecting rings as 4 warm halos. They stood in silence a long time before Lyana spoke. "We began afraid." Lucian nodded. "And loved anyway." Liora brushed fingers across the water. It rippled outward, scattering reflections of stars. "Fear taught us what love is worth." Lyrian dipped his hand, then offered droplets to her lips. "And love taught fear to bow." No more words were needed. They held each other beneath the silver sky, wolves sitting like statues at their feet until one by one those statues melted into sleep. Wind ruffled pines. The spring burbled, content at last. Somewhere beyond ridge and forest, the world breathed on, unaware that a prophecy had been rewritten in the quiet heart of a single dawn. Lyana rested her cheek against Lucian's shoulder. This is not the end of our story. He smiled into her hair. It's the beginning of the legacy we chose. Their rings flared once, then settled into steady warmth. Liora twined her fingers through Lyrian's, pressing her forehead to his. We'll tell your freckles new stories each morning. He laughed softly. Then let's give them a chapter called Tomorrow. Above them, the sky pulsed deeper blue, hinting at approaching dawn. Stars began to pale, but still shone strong enough to glitter in every droplet clinging to cedar needles. Kailas cracked one eye, sensing the first shift of morning. Astriel followed, nudging Lyana's boot with a sleepy huff. Lyana rose, extending a hand to Lucian. Liora and Lyrian followed. Wolves stretched, tails wagging. They walked back to camp, feet quiet on frost-rimmed grass. Companions stirred. Kieran's lute offered a hopeful arpeggio. Breakfast was simple. Smoked fish, oatcakes, and honey stirred into hot water. Voices carried low, affectionate, awestruck. Elder Saria, eyes still veiled, stood to speak a final blessing. May the next dawn find you unafraid to live in its light. May every choice remind the world that prophecy cannot bind a willing heart. The company lifted cups in silent toast. As sun-breached treetops, silver mist transformed into gold-flecked haze. Wolves padded to the ridge and sat overlooking the valley, ears flicking at fresh birdsong. Lyana slipped her arm around Lucian's waist. Liora leaned into Lyrian's side. Down by the spring, the water winked in morning brightness, reflecting 4 luminous rings. Love became legend, while no armies watched, no trumpets blared. It merely breathed, and because it breathed, every shadow lost its hold. The sun climbed with deliberate grace, brushing the valley in widening circles of gold. Smoke that earlier twisted from breakfast fires thinned and drifted skyward, replaced by the sweet resin of sun-warmed pine and the faint minty touch of frost melting off moss. The morning felt like one long breath, drawn in by every heart that had survived the night, then held, treasured, and very slowly released. Lyana walked along the spring's stony rim, the hem of her cloak skimming glassy water that now shone like a lake of captured daylight. Each ripple tossed back tiny sparks, bright enough that they glimmered in her eyes. Lucian matched her pace, fingers brushing hers with every step. They did not need constant contact to feel each other. The rings hummed whenever they drifted half a step apart, soft pulses that said, I'm here, in a language older than words. Kailas trotted ahead, muzzle skimming reeds, tail sweeping in loose arcs. A jay hopped along a branch overhead. The wolf paused, head cocked, and projected a lazy thought back to Lyana. Food or friend? She smiled inwardly. Neither, she answered. Just free. The wolf's ears flicked in content acknowledgement. Lucian lifted his gaze to the far peaks. Clouds from the early storm had broken, revealing ridges like sharpened marble against the sky. We could head home today, he mused. See black mist before summer returns. Home, she repeated silently, tasting the shape of it in her mind. Black Mist Castle, corridors echoing with laughter instead of hurried footfalls. Raven's garden humming with bees, Aiden's laughter bouncing off archways. But she also felt Silver Mist's rhythm in her bones now, as if the valley had woven itself into her pulse. I want to show you where I practiced sword forms as a pup, Lucian said, as though sensing her thought. There's a stream that freezes even in midsummer. We'd carve our names in the ice and race each other along it. Then we'll leave space for new names, she replied, nudging his shoulder. Yours and mine. He grinned, the rare, crooked smile that always reached his eyes. And yours will be in front of mine, no doubt. She opened her mouth to protest, but a shout carried from the ridge behind them. They turned as Kaelin waved an arm, spear raised. Message runners, he called, from Stormfall. Within minutes, 2 wiry scouts, 1 she-wolf and 1 lanky male, jogged into camp. Their breath puffed in quick bursts, and their wolves, lean mountain breeds, padded close behind. They bowed first to Raven, then to Lucian the Lycan King, who stood with arms folded, assessing. The female scout spoke, voice clipped from exertion. Stormfall Keep sends peace. They felt the surge last night. The old wards cracked but did not fail. They asked for word. Has Varric fallen? A collective hush snapped into place. Lucian glanced at Lyana, then stepped forward. Varric is gone, he said. His illusions broke in silver mist. He will not return. The message rippled through those nearby. Kalen released a long breath. Aiden's shoulders lowered. He set his lantern on a stone ledge and rubbed his palms together, almost confused at their newfound stillness. The scout smiled, relief unclenching her jaw. Then Stormfall stands ready to rebuild lines, shoulder to shoulder. She handed Raven a small token, a polished stone etched with a snowflake design. Our offering. As the elders spoke with the scouts, Kieran and Ella broke into gentle playing. Their duet carried across brightening air, the tune now familiar. Bonds of heart ignite the dawn. Wolves lay around the clearing in loose clumps, ears flicking, tails thumping. Darius eased onto a low bench beside Isara, his arm always circling her shoulders these days, as if even breathing lent her strength. She rested a hand over his, fingers laced. He whispered something that made her laugh, a light, tinkling sound that was still new after months of war. Nearby, Liora examined a line of tiny white flowers blooming beside the spring. They had not been there the night before. Each petal held a near invisible streak of blue, like a quiet promise. Lyrian crouched, brushing a knuckle under her chin. They look like bluebells that lost their fear of winter. She met his gaze. Like us. Astriel placed her chin on Lyrian's thigh, amber eyes half closed. Lyrian's wolf flopped on the other side of Liora, forepaws crossed in what looked distinctly like satisfaction. Elder Saria emerged from her tent, leaning only lightly on the shaman's arm. She walked with unhurried confidence to the spring, where she knelt and placed bare fingers against water. The surface shivered, sending a ring of light skimming away. She smiled, a soft upward curve. It lives. Thalos joined her, staff at his side. Time to seal it, he said. She inclined her head. With new words. The shaman beckoned Lyana and Liora. The twins approached, Lucian and Lyrian behind them. The valley hushed. Fires popped. A jay called once, then all fell still. Saria extended her palms. Repeat after me, she instructed. Not prophecy, promise. Liana's voice was first, and this spring remembers choice. Lucian added, and carries it through every stream. Liora spoke, it forgets no laugh, no tear, no quiet breath. Lyrian finished, and because it remembers, the land need not fear the dark. Light sparked from the water, weaving into 4 faint beams that touched each ring. The glow dissipated into the air like rising pollen, and was gone. Saria rose. Finished, she murmured, satisfaction settling across the lines of her face. Someone behind them began to clap. Kieran, gentle but sure. His palm met Ella's. The sound grew, spreading through companions. It was not a roar of victory, not the cheer of battlefield triumph. It was grateful applause, the kind that lingered in the space between heartbeats. Wolves barked once, short and happy. Lucian the Lycan King stepped forward, clearing his throat. We will rest until moonrise, he said. We leave at dawn for Blackmist, for Stormfall, and for every allied hall that needs healing. He looked at the twins, pride, a quiet sun in his gaze. But tonight we honor what was rewritten. Kalen grinned at Aiden. Sounds like we're throwing the first celebration the valley's seen in ages. Aiden's grin flashed wider. Let's make it bright. Preparations began with simple joy. Kieran tuned the lute, Ella fetched a drum lashed from deerskin, Darius constructed a spit over new coals, and Kaelin scouted with wolves to gather herbs that smelled of lemon and smoke. Isara supervised from a bench, offering advice, one hand always resting on the promise of life within. Lyana and Lucian helped erect lantern posts, nothing more than tall branches stripped of bark and set into the earth. Aiden's sapphire glass lantern crowned the center pole. Its white flame spread soft halos across trunks. Next, Lyana coaxed 3 small flames from the spring's glowing edge. Tiny blue tongues she carried cupped in her palms to light torches ringing the clearing. They burned pale gold, flickerless. Liora and Lyrian wove lengths of grass and vine into garlands studded with the new white-blue flowers. They draped one around each lantern post and saved 2 for the wolves, who accepted them with sudden dignity, wearing them like royal collars. As the sun slid behind western peaks, dinner finished. Fish roasted with early thyme, flatbread crisped on stone, a stew of root and dried berry that warmed throats. Laughter rose, real belly-deep laughter so startling that some paused mid-laugh, recognizing how long it had been since that sound filled the night. Kieran's first song was soft, wordless hum set to low strums. People swayed or simply closed their eyes. Kaelin danced with Ella in slow circles. Darius and Isara joined, gentler but no less sure. Aiden attempted a spin alone, stumbled and righted, earning applause. Raven invited Lucian the Lycan King into a short turning step that made them both appear far younger. The shaman even clapped along, her smile slipping wider each time someone laughed. Lyana sat at the fire's edge, Lucian behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist. She leaned back, resting her head on his shoulder, letting the drumbeat vibrate into her chest. A spark of movement caught her eye. Kaelis weaving between dancers, pushing noses into open palms, collecting scratches, spreading calm. Lucian's breath tickled her ear. "Dance with me?" She twisted to look up, eyebrows raised. "Since when do you dance?" He lifted a shoulder. "Tonight we make new memories. And I'd like the first to be you laughing at my clumsy feet." She stood, offering a hand. "Then prepare." They stepped into the clearing as Kieran shifted into a quicker song, something playful, almost mischievous. Lucian set one hand at her back, the other clasping hers. Their movements began awkward, both trying to remember half-learned steps, but quickly they matched rhythm. Slide, turn, dip. Liana's laughter bubbled free when Lucian nearly tripped over a root. He steadied, eyes alight. "Told you." She spun under his arm, the copper ring catching firelight. Wolves circled the dancers, tails wagging, sharing their human's joy. Liora and Lyrian joined, gliding into the tempo with surprising grace. He counted softly, not for his own feet but for hers, guiding yet following her lead when she improvised a twirl. She smiled shyly, exhilaration coloring her cheeks. When the song slowed, dancers drifted back to benches, flushed and smiling. Lucian leaned forehead to Liana's. "I prefer swordplay," he confessed. She brushed a kiss to his lips. "I like both." A hush fell as Elder Saria rose again. She held no staff, carried no runes, but her presence commanded attention. "Tonight ends the tale we feared," she said. "Tomorrow begins the one you write." She extended a hand toward the couples. "Live it loudly, so no shadow dares silence it again." She sat, satin blindfold shimmering in torchlight. Kieran played one final song, slow, low, full of ache and wonder. His voice joined Ella's in a gentle harmony. Words spoke of valleys awakened, of wolves guiding stars, of rings turning fate into thread. As the last chord hummed into silence, even the pines seemed to lean closer. Lucian helped Lyana settle near the spring, the water glowing now like languid amber. She curled against him, head tucked beneath his chin. Across the pool, Liora lay with her head on Lyrian's thigh, tracing idle patterns on his knee, while he combed her hair with gentle fingers. Wolves arranged themselves like warm stones around the perimeter, protective, at ease. The rest of the camp retreated to tents or rolled blankets under open sky, fatigue at last outweighing excitement. Torches guttered lower. The valley exhaled in a great hush. Lucian pressed his lips to Lyana's ear. "What do you want tomorrow to look like?" She considered. "I want to wake with your heartbeat under my palm. I want to see Kalis chasing pine cones while we hunt breakfast. I want to hear Liora laugh because her dream was ridiculous and Lyrian believed it." She tipped her head back, meeting his eyes. "I want quiet days." He smiled. "I want the same. And when quiet ends, we meet whatever comes together." She slid her hand to his heart. Together. On the opposite side, Liora whispered something. Lyrian bent to listen, nodding. He whispered back. Several moments passed in soft conversation, only they could hear. Astriel nestled her muzzle between them, eyes closing in contentment. Snow whispered across the surface of the spring, melting the instant it touched glowing water. Lyana watched the ripple, then spoke, voice hushed. "The valley is listening." Lucian followed her gaze. "Let it. We have nothing to hide." Kayla stirred, lifted his head, ears canting toward distant ridge. Lyana tensed. "What is it?" But the wolf's mind sent only calm. Storm gone, just wind. She relaxed, stroking thick fur. Silence stretched, not empty but full of low crackle, heartbeat night insect song. Torchlight dwindled to soft coals. Stars swarmed far above, brighter without moon's glare. They seemed to shift, drawing new constellations none had seen. Two interlocked rings hovering near the wolf star. Aiden noticed first, pointing skyward from his blanket. Others followed his gaze, murmuring wonder. Kieran named them Heart's Resolve, before drifting to sleep. Lucian and Lyana rose, guiding Kalis to a spot near Liora and Lyrian. Wolves arranged themselves nose to tail in a loose circle. Lucian spread a cloak for them. Lyana curled into his side. Across the circle, Liora settled against Lyrian's chest. Their wolves pressed close, breathing slow. A sudden breeze stirred, carrying the faintest scent of bluebells and cedar smoke. Unmistakably future and memory intertwined. Lyana tasted it, eyes drifting shut. Lucian pressed his lips to her forehead. Softly, almost imperceptibly, he spoke. "Thank you for choosing me." She smiled, already halfway to dreams. "Always yes?" Liora whispered something equally hushed. Lyrian's answering hum slid into the sigh of wind. Astriel lifted one paw, setting it over Kalis's, the gesture sealing a peace only wolves could share. Time loosened its hold. Night passed in a slow, shimmering tide of dreams. Lyana saw herself running a hillside with children's laughter in the air. Lucian dreamed of forging a new training yard, where no sword taught fear, only skill. Liora drifted through a library of living vines that sang secrets. Lyrian stood on a cliff watching dawn, knowing the path behind him no longer bled. With first blush of sunrise, wolves woke, tails thumping. The clearing stirred to life. Ravens stretching arms above head, Darius stoking embers, Kaelin yawning wide. Lyana blinked awake to gentle orange pouring through trees. She found Lucian already watching her, ring light reflecting dawn. He kissed her softly, just once, then stood, offering a hand. Time to begin. By the spring, Thalos and the shaman waited with shallow bowls. One by one, each member of the party dipped hands into the luminous water, then pressed palms to heart or brow. No spell, only reminder, choice, love, dawn. Kaelin filled Aiden's lantern one last time from the spring. The flame flared pure gold. "Carry dawn with us," he said. Aiden nodded. Reverent. Raven and Lucian, the Lycan King, exchanged a final glance, and without formal order, the company turned westward toward camp's edge. They left no post standing, no ruin unguarded, only footprints and thawing snow and lingering song and bark. Lyana walked at Lucian's side, wolves leading. Liora and Lyrian followed, hands intertwined. Companions arrayed behind. Kaelin with spear balanced, Aiden gripping lantern, Kieran and Ella shoulder to shoulder, Isara leaning into Darius's steady frame. Behind, the spring reflected the first stark beams of sunrise until distance and trees swallowed its light. Mist still hovered in pockets of shadow, but it felt like a memory already fading. Each breath of morning air sounded like possibility whispered against skin. The world had not changed shape overnight, yet every heart inside the valley beat to a new rhythm. Unbroken, unafraid. As they crested a gentle rise, black mist banners unfurled in the mind's eye, distant but certain, while far to the north, Stormfall's snowy turrets stood waiting for news. Somewhere in between, fields lay dormant, ready for seeds. Only peace would let them plant. Lyana squeezed Lucian's hand. "We will have quiet days," she said. He leaned down, brushing a kiss to her knuckles. "And loud ones," he affirmed. "Stories worth telling." Behind them, Liora stretched her free arm wide, letting wind tug her sleeve. "It smells like new parchment," she declared. Lyrian laughed. "And fresh ink." Astriel barked in agreement. They paused at the ridge's crown, looking back one last time. Silver Mist Valley shimmered, spring shining like a gemstone. Elder Saria stood at its edge, blindfold, shining pale. She raised one hand, not to wave farewell, but to signal something deeper. Blessing, permission, an amen to the tale now finished. Lyana nodded once, tears bright but light. Lucian bowed his head in quiet respect. Wolves sat for half a beat longer, ears forward, before standing, tails swishing against legs. Then they turned, and together the travelers stepped into sunrise, rings gleaming with the color of promise. No trumpets marked their departure, no banners flapped. Only the sound of boots crunching frost, and the low rumble of wolves' purr-deep contentment announced legend in the making. The world would learn soon enough what had happened in Silver Mist Valley. Songs would travel, stories would grow. But for the four who had lived it, the greatest tale was the warmth of a hand in theirs, the echo of a heartbeat that matched their own, and the quiet certainty that love, freely chosen, had become the strongest force the realm would ever know. The end.